there. I thought she got the ball.
Good evening, everybody. How are we? Hopefully everybody had an all right weekend. Starting to get over with the international break. Spurs are coming back this Thursday night against Chelsea. And there was a little bit that happened over the international break. It was definitely a longer one than usual. We were, of course, out of the FA Cup, so there was that to enjoy, but I guess Spurs were not in it. So, a little bit sad that we did see ourselves get knocked out, but it has been a while since we get to see Spurs play, and that's about to happen this Thursday night. Then on Sunday, we're going to be up against Southampton. And then the following week, it is the massive one against Eintracht Frankfurt. So things are going to start heating up again. Things are going to start getting more interesting again with Spurs. So I would hope to see you guys join me tonight for a fan show. Have a nice fan call-in. There are plenty of topics that we can discuss and we can cover. Definitely some interesting news today with the 2023-24 financial reports as well being released and Daniel Levy giving his comments on it. I'm no financial expert. I was a German major and a political science major and still not even using really any of that education, I'd say, to any degree. But I'll try my best to give my own thoughts on things, but would love to see some others come on, talk about that, and talk about plenty of these other topics that I have lined up for you. No Dave tonight because he is enjoying some time with the missus. I think they have some family visiting in town, and it seems like it's a very special occasion. So I think it'd be right to allow him to enjoy himself still before, again, like I say, the things start heating up with Spurs this week that's coming up. Appreciate the people that are already in the house, that are already in the chat. I'll get to you guys in just a second here, but just want to say, the queue isn't that massive. So would love to see some debuts, would love to see some people pop in, keep me company, give me things to chat about. Feel free to disagree with anything that I might be saying. I'm going to introduce these questions quite soon to you guys, but would love to have you guys pop on, have a chat, talk about, the upcoming news as well as the upcoming events with Spurs. So please, everybody, feel free to join me. And let's get to some of the lovely people in the house, at least to begin with. We have Dan Coys, who's been a member for 3 years, not 3 months, 3 years. Big up to you, Danny. And he's saying, evening, Dave and Jack. I feel like I haven't watched Spurs in ages. We haven't, Dan. We haven't. Been great supporting you guys for the past 3 years. Keep up the good work. Come on, you Spurs. Come on, you Harris Army. Dan, thanks for all the support, man, because you're supporting us during the games. You send in super chats as well as messages, while you're at the games or, even when you're, off with the kids and whatnot. You've been very busy, life-wise, but you still find time for us. So really do appreciate you, Dan. And like a lot of these people who've been with us for 3-4 years, it's crazy because that's practically as long as I've been here. It's practically as long as, the channel's been around. I think this is around our 3rd or 4th year of doing this whole shenanigans and all this sort of stuff around Spurs. And people like yourself, Dan, have been very, very kind to Dave and I. So we really do appreciate you, man. And I'm excited for Spurs to be back. I'm excited for Spurs to come back this week. It was a nice little break, international break wise. Dave and I get to sort of take a look at some things, behind the scenes with the channel, take a look at under the hood, of the car of this IrishHotspur fan channel. Then as well, we get to sort of relax ourselves, do things, outside of, this channel in our own personal lives that we maybe didn't get to do yet. You get to push, plenty of times you're sometimes pushing off sort of things. I know Dave, a lot of these streams that he does are very late into the evening. And so he gets to maybe have a bit more of a normal sort of evening and a normal sort of hybrid schedule of some kind, which has definitely been good to us. And hopefully he's enjoying himself right now. But yes, like I say, things are going to start heating up again, Dan, and I'm looking forward to it. I've had a long enough break from Spurs. I'm ready to get back into the mess and get back into the business, but really do appreciate you, man. I did post this link at the top of the chat, by the way, everybody, in case you are considering, popping on tonight, becoming a fan show member. Helps us out a ton by being a fan show member, but there are plenty of perks that come with it. As you probably already know by now, if you are watching this show, we do the fan shows, these live call-in shows for people to call in, chat with me for at least 10 minutes and talk about all the topics I have lined up for you guys. Or if there's something else Spurs-wise that you guys wanted to talk about, I am all ears and would love to hear you out. It's really just a show for Dave and I to shut up and for you guys to take over and give your thoughts on things. Rhino, who will be joining us tonight as well, is in here saying, big up, Dave and Jack. How's your day been? Have a busy, long week ahead. Can't wait for this week to be over. It's not even, we're only Monday and you already want this to be over, Rhino. But I'm looking forward to this week ahead. It's supposed to be very, very busy around Tottenham Hotspur, even life-wise, outside of the channel. I still have a very busy week ahead, but I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good today. Looking forward to what this week may bring. But Rhino, best of luck to you and in this week and all the craziness. And I think you said to me that you're going to be traveling down for the protests on Sunday, which I'm sure Dave and I, as well as some others, will have some chats about, this upcoming week, on Tuesday, as well, maybe some more content, as the week rolls on. Adrian Troca is in the house. Good to see you, Adrian. Hopefully you're keeping well, my friend. Good evening, Dave and Jack, and etc. All big up to you, Adro. And then we have Derek in the house as well. Good evening, Dave and Jack. Come on, you Spurs. Derek, always good to see you. Very, very kind to us and this channel. Shem Tan is in here. Hey, Dave and Jack. Hope you're both doing good and have a stress-free weekend. Weekend was actually very lovely. I got to go to a friend's party on Friday night, hang out with some people, met up with some people that I haven't seen in a very, very long time, sort of, tell them about everything that's going on life-wise. And it was nice. It was a good little Friday night. Then the following day, I spent the weekend actually with one of my best friends from high school, who I don't get to see that often, especially when I was in New York. But now that I'm back in Seattle, lives a little bit far away from me. So I got to take one of those lovely ferries, over to one of the many Puget Sound islands, and got to have a nice, relaxing weekend, catch up with him, sort of have, just a nice, kind of time, just talking about life. I'm going to his wedding, in the summer, and had to sort of ask some questions around the planning of that and all that good stuff, and got to hang out with him and his fiance. So it was actually a really, really nice, relaxing weekend. Hopefully you have, a nice, relaxing international break, Shem. We have a very busy week ahead, but yeah, hopefully you're able to take your minds off of Spurs, to some degree, or you're just able to relax, as well. Nick Carey, good to see you. Evening all. Enjoyed the last couple of weeks. Proper stress-free. Things are back to normal Thursday. Yay. Yes, they are, Nick. And we're getting ready for it. We're getting prepared for it in all the best ways we can. It's going to get back to some sort of regular schedule of content. We'll have plenty of big upstreams, going on. We'll be doing the Champions League, watch alongs, I think next week. I think there's some Premier League games that will be happening before ours on Tuesday and Wednesday. So feel free to join us for that. And anybody who's also maybe not a fan show member, that's always a good chance to maybe test out, talking with Dave and I and just chatting about Spurs. We have the game on in the background over on that platform, but usually we're just talking about Spurs, talking about life, talking about plenty of things. And plenty of people seem to enjoy it. Even the guys that are in the background right now, Ryan and Paul, definitely have taken advantage of it. I know Edward Davis, has taken advantage of it. So would love to see some people join us over there. And we're going to be back to regular scheduled programming with plenty of stuff happening. We have a panel show tomorrow. Then we'll have the members previews coming back. Channel predictions are coming back. The Twitter reacts, all that stuff. We're getting back to the regular schedule of things, and it pretty much won't stop until the end of the season. Really, I don't know. I could be wrong, but I'm not sure if there are any more international breaks until, of course, the big one in the summer. So yeah, let's get ready for it, Nick. Let's get prepared. Limpy Down Under, I appreciate that these exist. Thanks, Limpy. And like I said, to maybe some others that are listening in the house, if you guys want to join a different, maybe hybrid version of a fan show, Dave and I are going to be offering one both tomorrow and Wednesday. You can come on, watch a game with us, just chat about whatever. But then also on Fridays, I think we're going to start making a regular thing of doing this type of hybrid fan show, more like a round table discussion of some kind. Of course, it'd be great if we did have a real physical round table where we could all chat, but I think we'd like to treat it like sort of a pub session with Spurs fans. You get to come on, don't even need to have your camera on or anything like that. Just need to have some sort of ability for us to be able to hear you and go back and forth. And we will go through a variety of topics. And I think it went pretty well the last time, especially since it was an international break. Wasn't a whole lot going on Spurs news and Spurs wise, but Ryan, Paul, as well as some others really did lead the charge in that time. I know Dermatron was on with us, and I think there was one more that might have popped on at one point too. So it was a really good, hybrid fan show, and we'll be doing that on Friday in case Limpy you want to join, or in case some others want to join. Do you ever go to the New York Spurs bars, says Stefan Blois? I did, when I could. There are two of them. There's one in Brooklyn. I think there's one in Williamsburg. And then there's one in Manhattan. I think it's, what is it, Flannery's, I believe it's called. It's a very, very old school New York bar, an Irish kind of New York bar. And it's a good time. It's a good time. And they definitely have plenty of fun over there, Stefan. So I think you can look that up. I believe it's kind of near Midtown Manhattan, if I'm trying to remember correctly. I could be wrong. My New York geography, despite how long I lived there, was always terrible. That's just because for me, it was always a bit overwhelming, having to have any sort of grasp of all the neighborhoods and all the different places of the five boroughs. But I tried my best, to go over. But with the stuff that Dave and I do, we're usually spending time with you guys and spending time with each other for these game days. But when I could, I did make a couple of trips, and it's a very enjoyable time. There's a really old Irish, kind of old school bartender there who's who's definitely has his routines and definitely has his way of doing things. But it's a good vibe. It's a good vibe. So I say you should check it out if you can, Stefan. In Ferguson, afternoon, Jack. Hopefully your M's are treating you better than the Reds are for me. They're really naughty, and they split the series with the Oakland A's, and the hitting is still not happening. The pitching is doing the best it can, but it seems like it's going to be a very similar season to last season. Maybe, it's only so far in, right? You can't make any too many big conclusions, on the season ahead, but I am a little worried that it could end up being similar. And we've been there before with Spurs, where, we end up sort of seeing some of the similar problems from previous years end up playing out in the future. And it's probably what's prepared me very well for being a Spurs fan is actually being a Mariners fan at the same time. Big up to you, Moondog. Hopefully you're doing well, sir. And let me know if you enjoyed, your time away from for Spurs for the most part, because I know that you definitely were starting to get definitely frustrated, as plenty of us were, with Ange and with everything, involved around Spurs. So hopefully maybe got some nice time away, from the club, and we're getting back into the thick of things. We're getting back into the business of it, Moondog. So get prepared, get ready, grab yourself a drink, grab yourself, a nice bite to eat, because we have plenty of stuff to discuss tonight and before this big Chelsea away game, and the things are going to start heating up. So Moondog, appreciate all the support that he shows, my man, and yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the weekend and just enjoyed a little time away from Spurs for the most part. Ricky Nato, good to see you, sir. Hopefully everything's all right with you, my friend. Really appreciate your support, and thanks for popping in. Ian Ferguson saying big up to everyone. Very kind of you, Ian. And 14th Street, Jacko, West Village. See, I always get the neighborhoods wrong, Nick. You knew that. Anytime I was trying to describe any sort of restaurant or place to you, usually I was just way off. And there you are, everybody, especially Stefan Blois in particular. Head on over to the West Village, and you should be able to find it, no problem. But yeah, Flannery's, I believe, is what it was called, and it was a good bar. Kind of like I said, maybe dive-ish bar, with kind of old school sort of type of vibe, very, very long sort of bar top that you can sit along, and a very old school bartender that I remember. I actually was watching some Champions League games with Nick there not too long ago, but should be able to find it no problem if you just look it up on the Google and on Apple Maps or whatever you might be using there, Stefan. And then in terms of Spurs bars, I think the one that's, maybe the official Spurs bar, I think it's in like Finney Ridge or Queen Anne, Ian. But when it comes to the West Coast, I don't know when I'll be able to make it for an actual Spurs game, unless maybe we can arrange something on a technical level to either do like some sort of watch along or something like that from there. But, as I have to, spend time with Dave and spend, time with you guys for these Spurs games. And as much as it would be great to sometimes enjoy the games like a normal person, I think I have a very privileged and very lucky life that I get to have so many of you guys want to spend time with Dave and I and want to spend time with each other. And we have this sort of community of ours for these games. And on the West Coast as well, these games are at like 7 a.m., 6 a.m., 9 a.m. if I'm lucky, sometimes a bit later than that, where, I think at the latest it can get is something around noon. But for me, honestly, it's hard for me to even fathom going into a bar that early in the morning, whereas in the East Coast, it's still pretty early for the most part, but I think you can get away with, maybe a late beer or an early beer is what I mean by that point. But Ian, yeah, I think it's in like Queen Anne, Spurs, or like Finney Ridge sort of area, which isn't that close to me, but in the grand scheme of things in Seattle, it's very, very doable. It's just, as you know, I love to spend time with you guys for these Spurs match days. And then Al Ben saying, first time in 30 years supporting this club that I'm uninterested, even in our previous bad years. Club is dead from the inside, and it is showing on the out. I'm starting to lean, not as extremely maybe on terms of just being completely dead, but Al has not been a great season in terms of, things to look forward to, with this team. He's just haven't been given a whole lot of signs that things are going to be improving and things are going to get better. But we have huge, huge games ahead, and we'll just see what this team is made of. I'm not going into it relatively confident, especially with this Chelsea away game. We never have a good record against them. But then also, I think Ange is about to potentially have the worst record of any Spurs manager against Chelsea. It's definitely not saying much either, because it's not like any previous manager was doing that well against Chelsea. But I think he's about to face something like 4 defeats in a row to the Blues, which would be, I believe, the worst record of any manager coming up against that team. And like I said, it's not like it's a high bar to surpass when it comes to us against Chelsea. We never seem to do well against them. They are absolutely our bogey team for a long time now, and things haven't necessarily improved in that regard under Ange. But they've had a long break. They've had time to rest their legs. Ange has had time to rest his mind and also take himself away from the media pressure and everything, right? Like he had a big outburst, with the fans, had big outbursts with the media. Things hopefully have settled down to some degree, and now it's just about winning games. It's about winning football matches, and to a degree, it seems like Spurs, the players, the manager, everybody has sort of gotten away from that, has gotten distracted from that. They're often, it seems like blaming the fans or pointing towards other things when at the end of the day, their job is to win football matches. And they've had a lot of time, since some of these injuries have come back to do so, but we haven't really seen that real sign of improvement yet. But the massive games are the Europa League. And I think that's where Ange, as well as a lot of these players, are going to live and die by for the most part, Alben. But I see where you mean. International break does kind of do that to you, though, where kind of just leaves you, a bit uninterested about Spurs for the most part. But like I said, things are heating up, and we're going to get back into the craziness of it, and would hope to have you as well as plenty of other people with us for it. And like I said, earlier, not a whole lot of, not a ton of people in the background, not a huge queue of any kind. So would love to see you guys come on, keep me company, have a chat about Spurs, and help me approach these big upcoming weeks, ahead. Big games to decide our season. So would really appreciate anybody that is willing and is wanting to come on and have your say. And then if you can't do it tonight, or if you're not a fan show member, consider doing it on Friday after the Chelsea game. We'll be doing a hybrid sort of roundtable discussion as well after the Chelsea game and then before the Southampton one. Would love to see you guys make some sort of debut or join us over there on that big up platform. And then Ian Ferguson saying fair time zones can be brutal. It's just for me when it goes to going into a bar. You know what I mean? Like it's just not. I just can't fathom really going into a pub or anything like that. That early in the morning, especially here on the West Coast. It's a little ridiculous. Maybe I can somehow potentially tolerate like one Guinness or something like that. But even just having alcohol just that early in the morning is too hard for me. And then I guess you can order a coffee, you can order a soda and stuff like that. But for me, when I'm going into a pub, usually I'm thinking, all right, want to have some beers, watch the game, have a good time. And when it's that early in the morning, usually I just kind of just like to spend it with you guys. It's actually a lot easier. And I'm very, very privileged and lucky to have so many people that want to spend it with me and Dave. Nick Carey saying, this is Jack. Thing is, Jack, I don't want us to win games I don't back us to win games against anyone really. Nick, I know what you mean, man. It's about seeing how they do against Chelsea, and it's about seeing how they do against Southampton, I think, before we end up sort of really making our minds of whether the Spurs team is headed in the right direction and things are improving. But we have plenty of things to discuss tonight, and we'll see if some people want to pop on and have their say about them. I'm going to bring up the first topic, which we'll be discussing this evening. I said this earlier. I'm no financial expert. I was a German major and a political science major, so none of this is really going to help me out. But Daniel Levy has given his comments on the 2023-24 financial report and breakdown, and here it is via Chris Callan, by the way. Daniel Levy talking about the decreased revenue of 2023-24, down by 4% profit from operations, which increased to 144.9 million. Loss after tax decreased to 26.2 million. So from what I can tell from that is that there was in some regard a decrease in revenue, and then there was a loss after tax, but the revenue from the concerts, beer selling, various sort of ventures that they do to, make up for, loss of profits, as we know, via the NFL, Formula One, plenty of those different sort of revenue sources apparently have helped the club to some degree in terms of getting money back. But Daniel Levy had this to say: we currently find ourselves in the 14th position in the Premier League, navigating what has been a highly challenging season on the pitch. We are, however, in the quarterfinals of the UEFA Europa League. Winning this competition would see welcome silverware and mean qualification for the UEFA Champions League. We must do everything we can to support this team in these final key stages. Since opening our new stadium in April 2019, we have invested over £700 million net in player acquisitions. Recruitment remains a key focus, and we must ensure that we make smart purchases within our financial means. I often read calls for us to spend more, given that we are ranked as the 9th richest club in the world. However, a closer examination of today's financial fixtures reveals that such spending would be or must be sustainable in the long term and within our operating revenues. Our capacity to generate recurring revenues determines our spending power. We cannot spend what we do not have, and we will not compromise the financial ability of this club. Indeed, our off the pitch revenues have significantly supplemented the lower football revenues this year, testament to our diversified income strategy. I want to thank everyone who supports us through good times and bad. We are resilient and passionate about our club. We shall aim to finish this season as strongly as we can and continue to rebuild for success on the pitch. I did have some comments on some of these quotes from his, one of them being since the opening of our new stadium in April 2019, we have invested over 700 million pounds of net in player acquisitions. Recruitment, this is the part that I kind of took issue with. Recruitment remains a key focus, and we must ensure that we make smart purchases within our financial means. This is kind of where I believe Daniel Levy often sort of puts more blame on directors of football, technical directors, right? The guys that are responsible at the end of the day for the buying of the players. But in my opinion, Levy takes also a huge responsibility in that. He feels like, guys like, let's say, Johan Lange or in the past Steve Hitchen aren't doing a good enough job, then he should look to either get rid of them or he should look to bring others in to try to improve the situation. He went forever without actually sacking or getting rid of Steve Hitchen, but then continued to complain about the lack of, smart spending within the current confines of the budget that he was giving them. And it sounds like he's sort of saying something similar with Johan Lange, where he's just saying that we need to continue to make smart purchases within those financial means. And it's just something I take issue with, where if you are upset maybe about, let's say, not making smart purchases, then you wouldn't be spending 50 million pounds on someone like Brennan Johnson to replace a Harry Kane. And you wouldn't be spending the entire summer budget, this past summer budget, I mean, on this project youth situation. I'm a big fan of us trying to rejuvenate and bring through younger, talented players. In the long run, I think we really will benefit from it. For me, I just feel like it's, kind of a sign that, Daniel Levy is just, again, not really taking any responsibility for the spending and for that poor spending. He does, pay the wages of people like Johan Lange. He does pay the wages of the other recruitment people that end up doing the data scouting and all that sort of stuff, right? And he needs to, I think, take more responsibility for the fact that he is the one that hires them and he is the one that pays them and he is the one that gives them that budget to work with. And if you're going to be spending pretty much the majority of your budget on a project youth type situation after Ange has already had a season to figure out what he needs, figure out the squad. He had that season of rebuilding in his first year where we finished fifth. We didn't have any European competitions to worry about. We, in fact, got knocked out of the domestic cup competitions quite early. You just feel like, Ange needs to, or not Ange, sorry. You feel like Daniel Levy needs to take some responsibility for the fact that Johan Lange ended up spending almost all of our money on players that will only really see maybe the fruits from and the labor from, a lot longer down the road, perhaps even after Ange is gone, if things continue to go down this path. So it's just, again, very frustrating to see Daniel Levy sort of lay the blame on someone else's door without really taking any responsibility of it. And he's right. He has spent at times and in summers a lot of money, but what's that actually being spent on? It's being spent on 50 million pound signings like Brennan Johnson, which is huge overspend, and is showing that he even might be replaced, next season or two. And that's also being spent on, massive, investments for the future, when Ange Postecoglou needed signings for the here and now. He needed guys that he could be depending on, guys that he could rely on for this big Europa League season, for this big season with the Premier League, where we did finish fifth, but you want to improve on that. You want to try to gain, probably aim for a similar spot, if not higher. And it felt like, over the summer, Dave and I were pretty consistent about being really let down about where that money was being spent. And he seems to be blaming somebody else or is not taking much responsibility for it, Daniel Levy. And then also, he's not even including, I believe, in that 700 million pound figure, he's not even including, the player sales like Harry Kane as well, which I don't know, like, where did that Harry Kane money go at the end of the day? Let's go on to, though, another one of his quotes where he's sort of talking about, I often read, that, we're not spending enough despite being the ninth richest club in the world. He's saying, however, after closer examination of today's financial figures, reveals that such spending must be sustainable in the long term within our operating revenues. I feel like he says that, which, we must be spending within our means, it's kind of a ridiculous thing to say when you are the ninth richest club in the world. Like, you do have more spending capacity, more spending power than other clubs, but it feels like we as a fan base don't really ever see us ever flex our financial muscle, flex our financial budget on anyone to any degree. So again, it's just, I feel like a very strange thing to point out that fans are complaining about that, but then at the same time is saying, oh, but we still have to spend smartly within our means. I feel like you could be saying that if you weren't the ninth richest club in the world. But then also, for a guy that is saying that we have to spend within our means, spend within our budget, he is the highest self-paid chairman, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure that is true. He's the highest self-paid chairman of any Premier League chairman right now. So why is he giving himself these fat bonuses and these, massive wages, to himself, if he is complaining about us, not, if he's complaining about us, the fans, right, not spending, or complaining about the club not spending within its means. It just seems like, again, a huge contradiction from Levy. You can't be paying yourself the most of any of the chairmans in the Premier League, but then also complain about your own fans complaining about you, not spending money in the right areas. And also, as well, let's be honest, like, it's not like Spurs have ever really been a club that end up sort of, I think spending, money from their own, sort of pockets to fix a situation, right? Where they look at maybe the sale of Harry Kane, the season of finishing in fifth, they didn't really build on that. They ended up just spending all their money on this Project Youth situation, but they didn't actually bring any real here and now players to help back Ange. And we've seen that before with other managers where they were asking for X player, but they got a different player that wasn't really of the standard that we know that we can have to go further, to go and push for trophies and that sort of thing. So it's not really been the case that Spurs are a club that's going to take any risk or, really flex their financial muscle in any sort of way. And I think that's what Spurs fans usually are accusing Levy of. And also, as well, he's kind of the only real Premier League chairman that I can think of that is trying to go for this approach of, basically trying to run the club as a business where they are looking to make profit. Very few sports teams that I can think of are really able to make profit, season after season. It's a pretty high risk, pretty high maintenance type of thing to have. And it ends up usually being a losing business. It ends up usually being kind of a losing revenue type of thing to run. It's just sports at the end of the day. If you have that much money to buy a sports team, usually you're doing it because you want to win things and you want to win trophies. You're not doing it for the business side of things, but Daniel Levy seems to, which is, again, just something I find actually quite frustrating. But I'll ask you guys, will Daniel Levy step outside of his comfort zone this summer? By the looks of this report on the 2023-24 financial reports, it really looks like Daniel Levy isn't going to be stepping outside of his comfort zone, which is why you hope that we get maybe more rumors of takeovers or potentially, outside investment of some kind. Because, from his comments here, it's just something that we've seen before in the past where Daniel Levy just seems to be quite keen on, I don't know, just kind of playing within his own means and not really willing to push the boat out in any sort of significant way. Some other questions I'm going to get to here. Romero being linked with moves away from the club. Some saying he's spoken to Simeone. I'm not sure if I believe in that yet. It'd be pretty crazy if he has, but, would you sell Romero this summer? Do let us know. I feel like he's following along in the footpaths of potentially a Modric, a Bale, a Walker, and a Kane. So let me know. Do you think it's, the right idea to sell Romero this summer? Personally, I don't. Dave and I did give our own thoughts in our own video on that. Jed Spence interview, happy that he's done it. Are you guys happy that Jed Spence has come out, cleared the air on some things, or did you think that was really a necessary thing to do? Does it do more harm than good? That's kind of one of my questions for you guys. And then Spurs, doing an end of season review of Ange Postecoglou and are looking at Iraola. Was this something that was just pumped out by the journalists, the ITKs, to sort of get the clicks, or is this something that you do see ending up happening at the end of the season? And also, they gave a short list of managers that could potentially replace Ange: Marco Silva, Thomas Frank, Edin Terzic, and as well as Iraola seem to be banded about. So let us know if you have a preference of any of those. Personally, I'm not really that thrilled by that list. With Marco Silva, I have a lot of respect for him, but I'm not really sure if it's a good sign that we're going after someone who's, in my opinion, kind of done very well working with very average, if not below average, kind of Premier League reject players. I think he's punched above his weight for a long time now, Marco Silva, but is he really a guy that's going to be winning, trophies on a regular basis, if being given, a bigger budget and if going to a bigger club. I'm not too sure. With Thomas Frank as well, like I can see why people like Thomas Frank. Again, a guy who's punched above his weight, but is that really, the sort of football that we'd want to go back to? I think he's very similar to what we had with Jose as well as an Antonio Conte. This is not a guy that plays, free flowing liquid football of any kind. It would be kind of a step backwards in terms of the style of play that Spurs fans not too long ago were complaining about. And then with Edin Terzic, personally, I'll just say this quickly. I don't think anybody has watched Edin Terzic. The guy is, in no way a free-flowing, possession-minded manager that people have banded him out to be. I just think people need to watch more of the Bundesliga and maybe take a look back at his time there, because he definitely was not that manager, at least when I was watching him. And then with Iraola, I personally think he's more of a flavor of the week kind of manager. He's done great at his time at Bournemouth, but it seems like, Spurs fans and people in general, I think, are kind of overpraising his time there. I would actually take a lot of those Bournemouth players over our own Spurs players. And I think that shows a sign of just how poor our own recruitment has been. If you look at that Bournemouth forward line, I would take almost all of them ahead of the forward line that we have right now. That's just my opinion at the end of the day. But I think Iraola has done an amazing job at Bournemouth. I don't even want to discredit him or throw any shade towards him, but I do feel like he strikes me as just a guy that's had a great season this last year and kind of had a good, end to the season as well with Bournemouth. But does that mean he's ready to take on the Spurs job with all the complications and the frustrations and the obstacles that Daniel Levy, as well as some others, put in your way? I'm not too sure. And also, I just don't even see why he would want to leave Bournemouth with everything that he's building over there right now. Paratici returning. Do you want him back? Definitely some questions on that. And then, of course, we'll be talking about the Chelsea away game if there's some leftover time there. But from what I can tell, there isn't a huge queue. So again, please, everybody, feel free to hop on and have your say. But I think we'll get the show under the road. There will be a panel show tomorrow, the regular content, regular streaming, and sort of regular business from here on out. So get ready for it. Strap on in, everybody. But let's bring on Rhino. And then after that, there should be Paul. But I know Paul wants to, if he can, wait a little bit longer so that he can be in a more comfortable situation to have the call. So people are welcome to pop in ahead of him. But so far, not a huge queue. So hop on, have your say with me, and let's get the show on the road. We're going to bring in Rhino.
Jack.
Sir, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. I want you to pull up that statement again, please.
Yeah.
I know I'm sounding like an absolute idiot, but I want you to pull that statement up again, because I want to pull this apart like it's absolutely nothing. Can you pull it up to the very top first, Jacko, please?
Yep.
Just to where it starts, obviously.
Yeah, that's where it starts.
Okay, cool. Right. So let's get it started. Spurs obviously did declare a decrease in revenue. Well, that's just Levy, I think, trying to cover his own back, to be honest.
Well, I think the first thing to say, Ryan, is like the numbers at the end of the day are, true and are factual. It's just his interpretation of them and sort of his comments, in the quotes there, I think is where it can start to become a bit frustrating, is that's where he's potentially covering up. But to say that, the numbers themselves are incorrect, I don't think is true.
Well, I think, like I've always said, that's interpretation of an opinion at the end of the day. And obviously, we've all got our own opinions, and I honestly think that's absolutely rubbish. But hey, that's just my opinion. It's not like it's probably a bit here or a bit there, but I'm not worried about that bit too much. What I am interested in, and what has really frustrated me, is when he goes on and says we're currently sitting 14th in the Premier League, navigating what has been a highly challenging season. Okay, so it's been a highly challenging season, has it? Well, I wonder why that might be, Jacko. Explain to me why that might be, I wonder.
Well, I think it's because he's let down Ange Postecoglou in the spending this summer, which Dave and I made a huge point of, right? Regardless of what people's thoughts are on Ange Postecoglou, I think he's been dramatically set up to fail, in terms of the recruitment over this year, right? So he's sort of acting like, again, there's not really, it's a surprise to him that it's been a disappointing season when it shouldn't be to Daniel Levy.
Well, it's no surprise to us fans, is it? To be honest. And I can't. He says that, but then you can't just blame the recruitment. It's the manager as well. And I'm not going to keep going on about Ange because everyone now knows what I think about Ange, and that's why I'm not going to go into it. But so we've had a challenging season, have we? Well, that's funny because you're the one that said at the beginning of the season that we was going to be going somewhere, Levy. So that's kind of funny. And I wasn't saying that about you, Jack. I was talking about Levy there, not you or Davo.
No, I know, but I would push back on the whole recruitment. Can be ignored. I think he has dramatically let down Ange Postecoglou in terms of the recruitment. He's gone for a project youth approach when he already had a season of rebuilding, anyways, right? Ange Postecoglou, when he was first in the job, had that season to sort of look at the squad, see where it needed to be beefed up, see where it needed to be filled out, and he went over into this summer, which you would think would be a huge summer for bringing in ready-made players to help push on from last year. And also as well, we had a ton of extra games. We had the Europa League to deal with. We had plenty of other extra games and competitions to try to balance. And he brought in a bunch of unexperienced, very raw, but talented players. And that's not going to help you, very much, I think. And Ange Postecoglou has had to navigate that, despite my own frustrations with Ange. I do think from the get-go, the guy has not been helped out by Daniel Levy in the spending. And so when he says, oh, we've spent 700 million pounds in acquisitions, you have to look at it from a player by player perspective. Like bringing in Brennan Johnson for 50 million pounds is 50 million of that 700, right? That's a huge chunk there. And spending 40 million on Archie Gray, who's a great player, don't get me wrong, but as someone that, isn't really, in Ange's, first name on the team sheet basis. Now that he's had all his players back, from injury, Archie Gray now finds himself back on the bench, right? So a lot of that money, that's already 100 million, right? That's already 100 million pounds spent of that 700 million. So when Daniel Levy just throws numbers out like that, the recruitment is a huge factor, Ryan.
Yeah, no, you're going a little ahead of me at the moment because I was actually then going to go on to the other bit of the Europa League. No, you're good. So, right, then he says, however, I know you're trying to move it along quicker and I want it moved on a bit quicker as well. But obviously, that's why I'm not going to go too deep into some of this. But he says, however, we're in the quarterfinal of the Europa League. Winning this competition would see welcome silverware. Oh, well, that's funny, Levy, because you sacked Mourinho flaming 7 days before the end of a flaming cup final. So you quite clearly don't want no sort of silverware, really. Tells you everything. It's going to be welcome silverware. Well, you don't sack a manager 7 days before a League Cup final. Dick.
Okay, Ron.
I don't know if you've got anything more to say on that, but if you agree with me, then please say. But do you know what I mean? So then, and then it'll get me that we qualify for the Champions League. Well, yeah, fine. We qualify for the Champions League, but what, you're going to go and spend the extra money out at that point, are you? Don't think so, because you'll just pocket that money and you'll keep it to yourself. We must also do everything we can support the team in the final key stages. What key stages? Because you've given us a team that no one can either doesn't want to watch. Some fans don't want to watch. Some fans want to watch, but then they're disheartened because there's no. And then see what I mean, Jacko?
I agree with Al Ben's comment that Levy did spend, but a combination of who he hires and his aim of low player salaries, buying Johnson, Solanke, Odegaard, etc., all because better experienced players may cost the same, but around higher salaries. That's 100% spot on from Alan. I should have mentioned that what Levy has actually successfully done is lower the wage budget by a considerable, margin. I think it's something like 12%, of his, original budget has been, or the original salary expenditure has been lowered, right? And that's a sign that he has found a way to save a ton of money on just bringing in players that aren't really capable of demanding massive salaries and massive wages. The players that can demand massive wages are the ones that have proven themselves that they do deserve, those massive pay. And he's brought in a bunch of guys that, are talented. So he's, spending a lot on the transfer money for them because they're talented, but they're not going to be able to demand massive wages. So it's a very good point from Al there.
Yeah, and that's a point that you were saying about the likes of Archie Gray, and things about that. And I agree with you on that, Jack. I 100% agree with you on that. But then he says that we have to make smart purchases. No, we do have to make smart purchases, but let's do it with better quality. Not. it makes me laugh, Jack. It honestly does, mate. It makes me laugh. Like, how can you tell me, yeah, right, when we're making smart purchases at the moment? We're not.
Well, he kind of said that we're not, but at the end of the day, to Al Ben's point and to maybe a point that I made earlier, he's kind of deflecting, it seems like, the blame onto these directors of football or technical directors who he did hire and he has brought in, right? He can fire them and he can put pressure on them to be better. It's not like he can't do anything about that. He is the guy in charge. And once again, it seems like he's deflecting blame onto the people that have done the recruitment. Of course, they take some responsibility, but he is the one that has hired them and he is the one that's capable of getting rid of them as well.
Yeah, and then what makes me laugh is as well, where if you can go down a bit, Jacko, please, just so I can see the last little bit, because I'm going to go on to the bit where he says, however, close examination. So if we can, please, yeah. So then it's funny because then he goes and says, however, we've got to be spending within a subs. Can you say that word for me? Because my dyslexia is just going to kick in.
However, a closer examination of today's financial figures reveals that such spending must be sustainable in the long term and within our operating revenues.
Yeah. So, right, if we're the ninth richest club in world football, we've got more room to play with than what some of these other clubs have. So Jack, you're gonna have to say that word for me.
Sustainable?
That's the word, yeah. Yeah. So it is sustainable. Even if because it's still sustainable because we've got money coming in from like Beyonce, 50 Cent and people like that coming to the thing. So it is. And then it says, and then we go and we cannot spend what we do not have. Really? Okay, but we're the ninth richest club in the world, and we don't have money, and we you're not prepared to spend outside of what we do. You're telling me we don't have a top six budget? Really? It's weird. That is.
Well, he's not really able to dip into his own pockets, it seems like. He just doesn't want to, right? If things do go poorly recruitment-wise, he's not willing to push the boat out and dip into his own pockets or find money from elsewhere in order to fix the situation. He's just going to continue to use the budget and the profits within, this business that he's trying to run at Tottenham Hotspur, right? And that's the big issue is that he's relying on all the recruitment to be done perfectly, which will never happen. You'll never get all of your recruitment done perfectly. But then he's expecting all of that money that's going to be earned from, like you say, Beyonce concerts, and things like that, NFL, Formula One, all this sort of stuff. He's expecting all the revenues from that to be spent perfectly on the pitch. And that's just never going to be the case. You are going to get some things wrong. You're going to end up maybe overspending on a player or doing whatever thing wrong at the end of the day. And what plenty of clubs do is they end up pushing the boat out to try to fix the situation. It could mean, having to take a loan or might mean to, sort of dip into their own pockets to some degree and then maybe have to pay themselves back later. Various sort of things that you see other clubs do to try to, fix the situation quickly. And then Daniel Levy doesn't seem capable of that. He's just saying that we have to spend reasonably and sustainably. And even if that means, having to wait longer, even if that means that, we have to fix the recruitment structure again. So this is the frustrating bit, is that he's just sort of indicating that he's not really going to change his ways in any way. So on to that, Ryan, that's the question I had, is this summer, right? This summer is a big one for spending, on experienced, ready-made now players. Dave and I have been talking about this for a while now. We need to bring in players this summer that can really challenge for the first team, practically walk into the first team, guys that can replace maybe Sonny, in the long term, guys that can offer competition to Brennan Johnson on that right wing. And I'm not too sure if he's going to be
Yeah.
doing that, from these comments. These comments sort of suggest that
Mhm.
Daniel Levy is going to continue to operate the same way.
Yeah, and the last bit I want to just say on this, you can take it down now because I've gone through the points I wanted to make on this anyway. And he goes on and says at the end that I want to thank everyone who supports us. Well, maybe you can thank us because we're doing what we do as a fan base and try and get behind the team. But then what you can't do is go around and say that we should support you through the good and bad, because think about it realistically, right? When you've got a poor team out there, no one's going to get behind the team, and that's their right not to. Do you know what I mean, Jack?
Hmm. Well,
Simple.
I think, he's sort of just trying to ask Spurs fans, I guess, to sort of put aside maybe their frustrations for the time being and just try to support for the rest of the season. I could see what he means by that. But I also find, that anytime when people just sort of say, I don't know, everything, Dave and I heard recently, it's just sort of everything will be all right sort of logic, Bob Marley logic, everything is going to be okay at the end of the day. I always find it be a bit silly. We do have to look at the situation, which is Spurs have not played well this year. In my opinion, Ange has been set up to fail to some degree. Things are not looking good for the long term and for the future. And he kind of just wants everybody to sort of put that to the side and just, hope and pray that, somehow it all gets better, which is just, always, I think, a bit of, kind of just a
Sounds
deluded.
madness, doesn't it?
Uh,
It's not, Jack. It's like what the saying says: if you do something and you don't succeed, or no, it's the one where it says if the method of madness, that one. If you do something and it doesn't work,
you can't
and you
repeat it.
try again, yeah, don't repeat it. There you go. That's exactly what I'm trying to get at. And it's crazy, man. It really is. And to be honest, I'm sorry, but Levy just gets me angry. He gets me. He just gets me everything. He just winds me up. I can't. What I want to say, I can say backstage, but I couldn't say here because it's. It just boils. Let's just say it boils my waters. Let's put it like that, and that's the nicest way I can put it.
Well, yeah. Any other sort of business that you want to talk about, Ryan? Romero potentially leaving. Do you want to keep or sell him?
You know what? I said this the other day, didn't I? Really, on the round table, I said that I'd rather he stays, but if he goes, we know that Levy's not going to spend that money properly.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
But I've had a little think about it since, though, Jack. Since I said that, it's either he's not going to spend that money properly, or he's just going to pocket it. Honestly, it's.
You hope I don't think he is the, he does pay himself more than any other chairman. Which is just again shocking. Considering that he is complaining about us complaining about him, for not spending enough. Yet at the same time, he pays himself more than anybody else, which I think is a big contradiction. It's just that with Romero, I don't think we'll spend the money correctly. But my belief is that Romero just wants to play at the highest level and wants to see that the club that he's currently at is on a trajectory to be winning trophies and is headed in a positive direction. I would imagine that Romero doesn't, really have a lot of confidence that Spurs are headed in the right direction to deliver his ambitions. I think Romero looks to be a very ambitious player, wants to be at the very, very top of his game. And if Spurs can't provide that for him, then he's going to have to look elsewhere. I don't see anything wrong with that at the end of the day. I know a lot of people do, but this is what Modric did. This is what Berbatov did. This is what Bale did. This is what Kane has done. Kyle Walker, after his time with Pochettino, did the same thing. I don't see, the big issue with that. If the player is motivated to win the most trophies they can and to be playing with the very best of players, and they feel like the club they're currently at isn't doing that, then you have to sort of meet those ambitions as a club. And the club, probably aren't going to do that, which means Romero could be out the door this summer. My worry is like you say, Daniel Levy as well as the club is just not going to spend the money in the proper way to replace him. Just maybe last question, Rhino. Jet Spence's interview. I think we spoke about that on Big Up and maybe for some others. Was that a good thing to do, the Jet Spence interview, or is that going to do harm to the team and sort of the chemistry?
Just quickly, actually, on this, just before, because I wanted to give my prediction before I shoot off as well. I've actually looked at the full interview, and it hasn't changed the way that I think about it, where I think he should have said some things, but then he shouldn't have said others. So,
yeah.
And I don't want to go into saying what I think should have been said and what shouldn't have been said, because I'd be here for hours on end, and there's a lot of things, like I said the other day, that I agree with, but there's just a lot that I still on what I said, but there's others that I don't agree with, and that would have to be for another day or whatever, or maybe on Friday I can give you more on that, Jack, because I've got more freedom of how I can word things than I can here at the moment, and and I'm just after today with that statement, it has really wound me up. So I'm trying to be calm, careful what I say as much as I can. So but like I said on Big Up, gone.
Yeah. For the last question then, Ryan, on the end of season review that they could be doing for Ange, they've given a manager shortlist. Some of the Spurs journalists and ITKs. Marco Silva, Thomas Frank, Edin Terzic, and Iraola are the names being bandied about. Which one of those do you have a preference for? Because I know you don't like Ange, so which one of those would you like to see come in this summer?
Well, I think you know the answer that I'm going to give already, Jacko, because I gave it to you, I think it was yesterday, when we was on Big Up. So I think everyone probably knows where I'm going with that one. It'll be Iraola all day long. Definitely, 110%, no doubt about it. I will not take it. I mean, the only thing is, I would even throw Xavi in there, but I just don't want him ruining his career, his managerial career at least, to come to what I would now call this club being is a bit of a poison chalice. Just my opinion. But that's what
is that just out of like respect for Xavi, or is that so you would just rather Iraola, someone who's building something good at Bournemouth, is a good manager at the end of the day? You would just rather.
To be honest, I think even if Iraola comes in, I think it's a poison chalice even for him. And do I want him? No. I don't want him to come in now, and the only reason why is because Daniel Levy's here. I would want him if someone else came, but if that's what I'm given, I will back him. But I know we'll be in the same position in 18 months' time. So, and the Chelsea score, just quickly, I want to give. It's going to be a loss. I think we're going to get absolutely smashed, and I think it might be 3-4.
Chelsea are a bit funny, though, at the moment, right? Where they're not really playing as well as they were at the beginning of the season. So do you maybe have some hope there? My big worry is that Chelsea, just even when they are in a bad form, they just always have shown up against Spurs because it's their biggest game of the year, right? It's the club that they detest more than anyone else is Tottenham Hotspur, and they just seem to turn themselves on for that fixture, even if they're in a bad run. And they are getting Cole Palmer back. They are getting Madueke back. And I think they're getting Nicholas Jackson back, which is a big boost for them. It's just, my big worry is that even if they are in bad form right now, they just seem to always turn up against Spurs.
Yeah, and just one last very, very, very quick thing, because I do actually have to go myself. I would say this, that it doesn't matter what happens, it's going to be the same Tottenham that turns up every time from now until the end of the season. So let's not get happy about things, because it's going to end dramatically. I'd rather be angry about it before the game starts and then go on and hope that we win and then be happy about it and then move on than trying to hope and be happy about it now and then be angry at the end. I'd rather be angry and then lose and then still be in the same mood as what I was in before. That's all I can say.
Gotcha.
I'm sorry.
No,
Anyway,
good.
Look, Jack,
Ryan, I'll see you next time, my friend.
Yeah, I'll catch up with you later, bro.
All right, see you, Ryan.
Right,
and we're gonna go swiftly on to Paul, who's been waiting very patiently, but also, wrapping up things at work as well as at home at the same time. So we'll move this on to Paul. Anybody else wants to pop on, feel free to do so. Eddie has hopped in the background. The queue is still open. It's, again, not very deep. It seems like people are still, for the most part, pretty uninterested, with Spurs. But like I said, we have big games ahead, and we have huge weeks ahead. So got to find some sort of fiber in you, I guess, to muster up some sort of courage for these upcoming weeks. But we'll go to Paul, and then we'll go to Eddie. Hey, Paul, good to see you, man. You're on mute there, by the way.
I always do that.
Oh, no, same here, man. We always do it. Paul, plenty of questions for you, man. First ones were about Daniel Levy. He came out today on the finances. The thing I got from it, really, I think the big takeaway is just that I'm not seeing Daniel Levy really changing his tune, very much. And big question mark for this summer is, right, are we going to bring in some of those ready-made players to challenge for the first team and help Ange Postecoglou or whoever manager will be here, to push on? And by his assessment of the 2023-24 finances, it looks like, he's still sort of in the same, kind of mind frame about, where the spending can, go or how it can be done.
For me, it's same old with Levy. Why would he come out and say we've got all this money to spend? But I think you mentioned it. You said he won't dip in his own pocket. When it all goes wrong, it all has to come from what the club is already generating.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where our biggest problem is. And, he's reduced our wage bill by so much. I think we're one of the lowest now. We're nowhere near where we were.
Yeah.
And then you've got, and he says, we spend £700 million, but what has he actually spent that on?
Yeah.
Like
that's where I'm
in the
coming
summer,
from.
He bought Brennan Johnson for 50 million, Solanke for 50 or 60 million.
Yeah.
Can't remember what it was.
Big number.
He bought Archie Gray for 40 million. It's all well and good buying these players, but they're all young, and the wages, as you said, are lower.
And the most experienced one was Solanke, who, as much as I love Solanke, he's off the back of, one really good season. But apart from that, hasn't shown that he's, top of the line striker yet.
No, which I've never known Spurs not to have one main man up front. We've always had it from Peter Crouch, Jermaine Defoe, Berbatov, Van der Vaart, Klinsmann, all these Sheringham, all these players were world class up front, and not forgetting a good old boy, Harry Kane. I've never known Spurs to be without what I would call a 20-plus season striker. We've never been without that single player. And that's what's so frustrating to watch at the minute. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's happening, but it's frustrating to watch at the minute. And for me, it's not so much down to Ange. It's, as I say to everybody, we finished fifth yesterday, last season even. We had the likes of Højbjerg in the middle. You had Emerson Royale. You had all these experienced players on the pitch. Not saying they were fantastic.
But Ange did use them,
Yeah, but I'm not saying they were fantastic. But in the same sense, we still finished fifth in the table.
Right.
And all I saw we did in the summer, we got rid of every single bit of experience, Nyon, we had on that field and replaced them with kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we wonder why we're 14th in the table.
100%, Paul. Go on. Sorry.
I hear people saying, like, it's all, Archie Gray and Bergvall have had really outstanding seasons. Yeah, they have, in the position they've been put in. There's a good season for youngsters. But again,
they shouldn't be your players of the season.
Carry this team.
100%.
You know, there was a saying, you can't win anything with kids. And it proven true. And everyone brings up Fergie's golden years, you know, but if you look at that team, he had experience in it as well. It wasn't like 11 kids on the pitch. You know, he had full, you know, yeah, I don't know. It's just, the experience has just disappeared for me.
Yeah,
And that's where I
JTB
think
agrees.
the biggest mistake was. And now we're suffering for it, you know, and I'd put any manager in this position, any manager we get, and who's been mentioned, you know, from Ange to Conte to Mourinho, any of those, I still think we would be in the bottom half of the table. I doubt we'll be 14th. You know, I reckon we'll be sat around 10th, 11th. You know, it's where Bournemouth are right now, but we wouldn't be any higher.
Yeah.
You know, because the players are too young. They can't sustain it.
Yeah.
2 games a week. You know, they're not experienced enough for me for that. You know, they're great for a good 90 minutes, maybe in the Europa League and whichever. But now, it's for me, the Europa League has got to be priority.
100%.
You know, I don't want to see any more half-heartedness. And to be honest, as much as people might want Anjao and Jin and everything else, I just hope to God we've got a European quarter-final against Feyenoord. I want the fans to show up. It's a big occasion. It's not like, you know, as everyone says, the Mickey Mouse Cup, but obviously Newcastle haven't seen it that way. But it's kind of, for me, yeah, I just think we just need to get behind the team. I agree with him on that point.
Yeah, I think some people that dug him out for that part, I don't really have a ton of issue with. I do have it, you know, when sometimes, you know, there has been a little bit of this season of everybody's just sort of like, oh, just get behind the team, like, you know, no matter what. And it's like, well, we're allowed to be able to talk about the issues at the club while still trying to, you know, support our team, you know, to the best of our ability. But, you know, for these upcoming massive games, he is right that it's just about, you know, hopefully getting as far as we can in the cup competitions, especially the Europa League, and seeing where it goes from there after that.
To be honest, I think we are good enough to win it. If you look at the teams that are still in there, you know, yes, Frankfurt have had a good European campaign so far, but they are starting to fall off in the league, in their own domestic league. You know, they're not performing as well as they were. So, you know, maybe it's time for us to show why we're one of the favourites.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, Frankfurt seemed like a good team to, you know, if he gets past Frankfurt, I mean, that they are a good side at the end of the day, managed by a pretty decent manager. So we will see, you know, Spurs can get the business done against them. You know, that would give me a lot of hope for the rest of the campaign.
But for me, it's like there's been no easy games left in the Europa League now. There's none of these so-called part-time teams or anything like that. These are all professional teams in their own respective leagues.
Yeah.
So we need to go out and play them like we're playing prime Real Madrid.
Yeah.
You know, we need to go out and, you know, we can't take any prisoners. We can't be doing this side to side, front to back, left to right, back again, full. You know, I've watched recently some clips, you know, from previous, quite recent Spurs teams. And if you watch them, we were always pressing the ball up high. They were always running down the wings. They were always trying to beat their man. And let's not forget, they did have a shot from outside the box as well, which you don't see.
Yeah.
You know, most of our goals are literally have to be tap-ins. No one wants to take that opportunity to curl one in. Or, you know, we've always.
And do you think that's a player issue, not as much a manager issue?
I think it's what they're being told to do, personally. Because it doesn't make any sense. You know, they've broken through, and sometimes they're trying to play someone through when we're all just screaming at the telly, take a shot.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's kind of, sometimes you got to try your luck. And, you know, the more you pepper that goal, the more chance you've got scoring.
Yeah.
You know, but if you keep trying to go down the wings, cut inside and lay the ball off for a 6-yard tap-in, you're not going to get very far, especially against the likes of the low block teams and stuff. You do have to pull one out from the box, outside the box. Look at Sonny. Sonny's done it a few times. You know, and then going back, you know, we had loads of players that could pump him in from outside the box. But now we don't have anybody. No one's taking shots. I can't remember the last screamer goal we've had that's not been outside the 18-yard box.
I don't think we have. I think for me, it's a bit more of a player issue personally, just because Sonny, for some reason, doesn't seem to have the same confidence to do it this year. Madison is the only other player I can name that can do it, but he doesn't really do it on a consistent enough basis at Spurs, where I can really say that it's a manager thing. And then Brandon Johnson, I personally don't even think the guy can actually hit the ball from outside the box. I think he knows it has to be a tap in for someone like him. And as much as, again, I love Dominic Solanke, he's not really someone that I can think of that scored a ton of screamers or anything like that in his life, or has been able to, take on his man and then be able to curl one in, around the keeper and, top sort of level like you see from top players. And when you look at other teams who have top players, elite level talent, those guys are capable of just taking the most finite a little bit of space and taking advantage of it. Whereas our players, they need like an open net in order to score. And yet they still will find a way to miss, it feels like, or still find a way to mess it up. For me, it's a bit of a player issue more than it's really been on Ange. But the thing is with Ange, Paul, is he did say that, once I get injured, or once the injuries, lessen, and once I get a lot of my players back, you'll start to see my football again. And I think the big worry is that I don't really know if that's been the case, since, the injuries have lessened.
Yeah, but it's like, I think with that, yes, they might have come back, but how many minutes of football have they actually played? Are they match fit? They might be fit enough to play, but are they match fit? Are they up to that level of stamina and stuff that requires that full press all the time, going forward, we never stop sort of attitude? Are they fit enough for that? And I don't think they are. They've literally all just come back from not just a couple of weeks out. They've been out for 3 months, 3-4 months. So it's going to take time for them to build that match fitness up. So I do get that to a degree. It's not just going to be like a light switch where they all come back and all of a sudden we start scoring 6 goals a game.
Yeah, that's probably reasonable of you.
This is why I'm quite happy we've got these 2 games. We've got a Chelsea game, which, we all know what happens at Stamford Bridge, but I can never back my team to lose as much.
But it's a good away test for the Frankfurt game the following week, right? In a sense, these are good. These are good. That's a very good point. Good testers for this upcoming Frankfurt game, which is the more important one. But playing a Chelsea side, do you go with your strongest team against Chelsea, or do you go with your strongest team against Southampton?
No, go against Chelsea, and the main reason for that is because those players need a test. They need to be playing against players that are going to be running at them. They need players that are going to be testing them. So when we do go to Frankfurt, we're not going to be on the back foot, because that's my biggest worry. If we play our first 11 against Southampton, which is a game we should be winning even with the players we've got, that with all the injuries we had. But then I want to see our first team, because they need to be match fit ready for that Frankfurt game. And for me, momentum's a massive thing. If they get a result there and it's going to put them all in a good mood, a week before they play Frankfurt, they can then get ready and then go for it again.
Yeah.
What I would rather see.
I had the same
I
opinion.
I also don't want to see 7 changes for the Southampton game either.
Yeah. I'm in a very similar boat.
I'd rather the first team start and he changes them all out in the second half, just to rest them, keep their minutes up, because these are the players we're going to be relying on now to get us in the Champions League. And if we don't win, we haven't got European football. So, if that's not the biggest motivator for these players individually, then I don't know what will motivate them, to be honest.
No, I'm in a complete agreement about that. I would go with the strongest team against Chelsea, because I think it is your best chance of preparing for what the Frankfurt game will be like. And then with Southampton, probably look to rest some of the guys that, like you said earlier, are still only really coming back from injuries. So you don't want to push them too much, especially if you plan on using them for the Thursday game. So I really agree with you on all that, Paul. When it comes to maybe the end of season review of Ange Postecoglou, do you think that was just sort of for clicks, over the international break, or do you think there is some truth to that Spurs are kind of looking at other managers right now and are thinking about making a change in the summer?
For me, there's always going to be talk around any manager when they're not performing.
Right.
No matter what, there's always that talk in the background. With Spurs, because we've not had a manager longer than 18 months, it's about the right time. Where the press starts getting, they're going to go now. They're not performing. They're not doing this. They're not doing this. They're not doing that. Now, I don't know if anybody else's jobs is like this, but in my job, I have an end of year review every single year. That's not anything new. I'd expect them to have an end of year review, whether we did the treble or whether we finished in the bottom half of the table and went out of all competitions early. I'd expect that review still to happen regardless. But I think what happens in the last bit of this season will heavily reflect in what happens in that end of season review.
100%. I'm kind of in that position where I actually found it to be a bit more for clicks than it really was realistic. I think they are waiting until, the outcome of this Frankfurt match and just to see how far and deep we go into the Europa League, because with the Premier League, personally, I don't really have high hopes for us finishing, in any European spots of any kind. So it's just to see how he handles this cup competition. And if he gets us as far as a final, I feel like Spurs, the Spurs board will consider, keeping him around. If they don't, then, I think Ange could be out the door just by the sheer, results, even though I think he has been set up to fail to some degree. I didn't think he would fail this dramatically, with how the season has gone. So I'm in agreement with you there. I think they are still waiting for the judgment of, these upcoming games. They probably have gone a little too soon on it, personally. On sort of the go ahead. Sorry.
With Ange, yes, I'm really, really frustrated with him, but because he's not performing, there's hardly any in-game management at times. But then I look at what he's got, what he had on the bench. What could he do to change a game?
Yeah.
And we all scream at him, but then I can't remember the last game, but he changed 2 people at half time. I can't remember. He did that the last game, didn't he? I think. He changed 2 players out because they just weren't performing at all. There was no movement, no nothing. They were just standing static. So he does do it, but in the same sense, Spurs, we expect more. We don't want to be 14th in the table. We can be, we'd have been happy with a mid-table finish this season, but to be bottom half, it starts getting everyone a bit nervous. Because the more games we lose now, the closer we edge towards that relegation zone. But I've said it before: if we're only buying players from these clubs that were down at the bottom at the time, where's that going to? Do you see what I mean? It's kind of we've swapped places.
Yeah, and if anything too, like when you were also in kind of the mire like this, when you are in the dumps, and these players have found themselves in that situation before, they've shown, in the past that they're not really capable of lifting their own club and their own situation, up. They kind of fell with them, the Madisons and whatnot of the world, even as talented as guys like Odebear are, even guys like Brennan Johnson, to a degree. These were, like you say, guys that were playing for clubs towards the bottom end of the table. They're not really capable of, carrying a side or anything like that. That's my big frustration too with Spurs right now. And I put that on Sonny. I put that on Madison. I put that on a lot of players' doorstep. They don't really, none of these guys really have at all, sort of picked the team up, when we've been playing poorly and just sort of drove us through games. And a good example of that would be the team like Man United this year, who I think have been also awful, just like us. But Bruno Fernandes, for them, right? He has carried them, through so many games I've seen this season. And we don't really have a player like that. I'm not even sure if I want a guy like Bruno, but what I mean by that is you could tell that he is a top quality player and has a top mentality to some extent by the fact that when they have been playing poorly, he just finds a way to sort of just drag them through games, and just don't really see any player that's doing that for Spurs right now, which has also been something that's really hurt Ange. It's not really, Ange should find a way to fine tune and get the most out of these players, but who's that guy that's really, lifted him up? Who's that guy that's really lifted the team up? No one really has this year. It's a big concern.
But that brings me nicely on to Romero.
Oh, yeah. Let's go to it. What do you think?
That's what I want to see him do. In this last bit of the season, he wants Champions League football. You've got the opportunity to get Champions League football here without moving. You're a World Cup winner. You're a Copa America winner. Now's the time to take that determination, that effort, and whip this team up.
Yeah.
You're the winner around here. You've done it. You've been there. Get these players riled up. If they make a mistake, get on their case. He's vice captain. I want to see him step forward now in his last bit of the season. He's been injured. I get that. But now I want to see him come. I want to see him progress. I want to see him progress that team, grab it by the scruff of the necks. And if people aren't playing, get on them. You know, be that
100%.
player that, you know, and tell them if they don't like it. You know, I'm a World Cup winner. I'm a cup. You know, I want to stay, but we've got to win this.
Yeah.
You know, you get into gear. This is our chance. We can get into the top competition in Europe. You
I
know,
agree, Paul.
they shouldn't need any more motivation. But I want to see that from Romero a lot more. I want to see him start pushing the team, you know, congratulating them, not so much having a go at them, but, you know, getting them in, like, say we do get a setback against the runner play. I want to see him get everybody up saying, come on, it's only one, let's go. You know, we're better than these. We can go and score. Because to me, I think Spurs can beat anyone on their day. On their day, we can beat anybody. We just need to show up. Which
I agree with that on Romero.
We haven't done, you know. So I don't want to hear Romero talking about, you know, buttering up Atletico Madrid and stuff like that, because they've got Champions League football and stuff like that. You've got the chance to get that here. Yeah. So buckle your ideas up, get back in the team, start playing 90 minutes and start carrying this team forward, because I believe he's the only one that can do it. In our starting 11, you know, he puts in the tackles, you know, he puts in the effort, he's got the passing, he's made a few mistakes this season. But, you know, as I can't remember who said it, but he had 2 weeks off in the summer. He didn't get 5 weeks or 4 weeks, he got 2. Yeah. You know, so he's hardly had any rest, and he gets a 3-month injury, right? Okay, now we're in the business end of the season. We've stayed in Europe. Now get going. Now drag this team forward. Show us the Romero that plays for Argentina. You know, the passion, and get these players up for it. Because if he's up for it, that'll bleed off to everyone around him.
100%, Paul. I really agree on that with Romero, because if he is going to leave, let's say in the summer, and then let's say he's asked about, you know, his time at Spurs and whatnot, and then he sort of said, oh, you know, I felt like the club didn't do this, club didn't do that. It's like, well, here's your chance, you know, to finish on a high to some degree, you know, sort of show that you are a guy that can, you know, drag us through games. You are a guy that can play to the highest of level and sort of, you know, pull your team through it, you know, even if things are stacked up against you. Then it shows that you are a top player with a top mentality. Whereas this season, he just hasn't really shown that. And that's a great point to make. He is like even Jason Bell says, you know, I think Bruno is that guy that can bend a game to help United. But, you know, Maddison, he's saying, hasn't been that guy for us, even though he thought he would be. I agree with that on Maddison, but you're right by pointing out that Romero is also someone that should try to be that sort of player for us. It's a good point.
With Maddison, for me, it was never going to be Maddison for me. Yeah. Because to do that, Maddison's more of that creative player that's just going to pop up, you know. And if you notice in some of these games, I think he goes down far too easy at times. You know, he'll get a challenge. He won't ride the challenge out or just go straight down and grab the free kick. You know, sometimes you need to ride a challenge, you know, and I think that does send out the wrong signals to the rest of the team. You know, whereas Romero, he's one that will go into tackles.
Yeah, he's there for war. You know,
he's there for war. And that's the sort of player we need to do that. I never saw Maddison as that. I saw Maddison was going to be our creative genius in the middle of the park, going to unlock defences. But then he can't do that when you haven't got the likes of Brennan Johnson, Sonny, Tell, Solanke. None of them are making runs through. Not one of them are running off that ball. At times, I can stand there and watch a Spurs game, and they're all standing around like 11 men when we've got the ball. No one's running, no one's looking, no one's doing anything. You know, move and pass. But they're not. They're just stood in a triangle. That's all they seem to do, which is the frustrating part.
Completely agree, Paul, on those points about Romero, man. Really well said. I'll actually, you know, hopefully Dave can hear some of that, because I completely agree with you on it. Did you have any other things maybe to bring up, maybe on the Chelsea game or Jets Spence interview? I sort of spoke to you about, you know, on the Big Up platform, but, you know, was there any other sort of big things that you had, you know, sort of on your mind that maybe you haven't gotten to cover?
Not really. As I said, that statement from Levy was a load of rubbish to me. The only thing that I did agree with it in there is that regardless who the manager is, what we're doing, how we perform, it's a European quarter-final. Yeah. Let's get behind them. Let's behind them. Let's sing from the treetop. We don't get there every season. Let's do it.
100%.
You know, let's make this an occasion. You know, when they're back at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, I don't want to see them all there. And, the first sign of trouble and the crowd goes quiet. I want to see them get behind the team, even go 1-0 down, get behind them, drag them through it. This is our opportunity to actually win a trophy. So, let's get behind the team and literally try and force them to play their best.
Really well said, Paul. Try to generate, some sort of, really, really intense as well as positive atmosphere for this club and for this team to get over the line. And I think it was a really great fan calling from yourself here, Paul. Really, really agree with a lot of what you had to say, man. Really, really passionate as well. So I appreciate you. And thanks for making time for me. I know you were, rushing through things, finishing up with work and, getting the house situated and stuff. So I appreciate you, man. Thanks for working with me and coordinating things with me. Hopefully, the next fan shows are a little busier, so I don't have to put you under that sort of time constraint, man. But thank you, sir. And class as always.
Okay.
I thought you've been very good company of recent, Paul. You've been very good company. So appreciate you.
Do try.
Okay. All right. See you next time, Paul. And hopefully we do generate that atmosphere for Thursday. And I will see you potentially if you are available. Dave and I will be doing a fan show similar to what we did on Big Up last time this Friday. It'll be not sure the time, but maybe early-ish afternoon UK time. You might still be at work or something. But thanks, Paul, for helping us out this week. You've been great.
No worries.
All right.
Catch you later, mate.
See you next time.
Come
Bye,
on,
Paul.
Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs. Big up to Paul. The guy's been making a lot of sense, and has been had a lot of really, really good things to say, especially on the last time on Big Up as well as some other streams. So would love to have more Paul back. Eddie has popped in, which is great. It'd be nice to have more than just the two guests. So we're going to have Eddie. The link is still up there. I don't really have to take it down because it looks like it hasn't been that busy really for people wanting to come on. But in case there are some others, there are some people lurking around. The link is up there for you. But Eddie might be our last guest of the evening, or at least from the looks of things. But let's bring in the man. Edster, good to see you.
Hey, Jacko, how are you going?
Doing the best I can, man. It seems like, people are still trying to take the longest break they can from Tottenham Hotspur at the moment. And, I can understand that. But we have a big week ahead. We have Chelsea away. We have the Southampton fixture. And then, the one after that is the Frankfurt, which is where the whole season is hanging on to. So, we got to get back into the craziness. We got to get back into the mess.
Yeah, definitely. And it's going to be fun. I can't wait for this week.
On to maybe that Chelsea game. Paul did bring up a good talking point about, do you play your strongest team against this Chelsea? Do you use the Chelsea game as preparation for Frankfurt? What do you make of that? Do you play your strongest team against Chelsea, or do you play stronger team against Southampton? Do you just continue to rotate and rest players, knowing that the Thursday match is the most important one against Frankfurt? Where are you on that?
Play our strongest team. No point in not playing our strongest team. They had a lot of our players have had 2 weeks off. There's a couple that have gone away or international or have played some games, but they mostly been resting for a lot of them. So play our strongest team in this upcoming Chelsea game. We gotta win at Chelsea. I know we don't win often, but it's a game we gotta win to get momentum moving. And if we beat Chelsea, that's a huge momentum boost to not only the fans but the team, because they know they don't win. We don't win at Stamford Bridge, but if we win at Stamford Bridge, that momentum could carry us for the rest of the season. So I want us to play our strongest team, and come Southampton, just make simple rotations. Just don't do 7 rotations like last time against Fulham. Do like 4 or 3 of them.
Yeah.
Don't do 7. That was ridiculous by against last time. But yeah, strongest team, momentum boost is what we need, and that game is something we should aim for.
That was the frustrating thing about the Fulham game, was that he already knew that Ange had a lot of weeks off, for these players, even though, yes, some of them will be on international duty, you can't really control any of that part, right? And he decided to rotate a lot of players. And then some of those guys that he rotated into the starting lineup, he took them off very quickly at halftime because he was disappointed with them. But it was kind of like, well, maybe there was that chance there to try to grab some sort of momentum and some sort of chemistry amongst the winning players. He rested Odebear. He rested, I believe, Madison, right? He went with Basuma in midfield. It seemed a bit strange, by Ange to make, I agree, that many rotations if you're trying to develop some sort of winning momentum, of some kind. But he's gotten a big break now. from international break, and just gotten a break. Players have gotten a break, so you just hope that these players are gonna, I guess, they just have to step up and they just have to start winning football matches. No real ifs, buts, or maybes about it. I am worried because Chelsea, even when we have played well against them before, they have found a way to get over the line against us. And Ange, to an extent, has had some decent performances against Chelsea, but he still wasn't able to pick up the wins. You look at the first time around, at home, right? We had the red card and the injuries and that sort of situation, right? And then, most recently this year, the game at home as well, we found ourselves, 2-0 up. And then, we sacrificed the lead, from there. And it was a, tough situation, to see us, again, maybe play decently against Chelsea, but then they still found a way to blow past us.
Yeah, I woke up halfway through that game. I was like, "Oh, we're losing. Oh, great! This is gonna be a fun day, I guess." But yeah, look, Chelsea's a difficult team to go play against, especially away. They're just, I don't know, Stamford Bridge is just different. That atmosphere from the Chelsea fans and from the supporters. So, look, I want us to go full force against Chelsea. If we, like I said, if we manage to beat them, it's huge momentum moving forward. And I want to see players doing what we haven't seen in the past, doing Ange ball. I want to see that back. And I made a huge statement a months back while playing clubs. I don't think you were there, but I said I give Ange to offer the international break. I knew the moment the players came back, even before the international break, they wouldn't be fit. They would be ready to play. They'd be ready to play. They weren't match fit. They wouldn't have the stamina all the way back. So I'm looking forward to these game weeks to see what Ainge does and see what the players does, because look, they should all be ready to play, ready to go. And look, I just want to win, Jack. You know me, I'm a winner. I'm a sore loser when it comes to losing. So look, winning will do me a huge amount of good, and the fans good. So let's go to Chelsea and let's smash them. That's what
Paul is right. Paul is right from earlier, right? When I asked him, when the players have come back from injury, and said, you'll start to see my brand of football again. We haven't, really, but Paul did bring up the point, they are coming back from injury. It's not like they're just going to be ready to go instantly. It's not like they're going to be at their very best. It will take time. But like you say there, this has been another added break for them, this international break. And I think these sort of, what do you call them, excuses or explanations, don't really care, right? I agree with you. I think they do just have to start winning games, because these games are massive. The Chelsea one is going to be massive just for the fans, but also for potential momentum that could be gained for the upcoming fixtures. And then, Southampton, probably less important, really, but you just got to beat Southampton. If you lose to a team like Southampton, you really do set yourself up for not a whole lot of confidence, in the future fixtures after that one.
No.
On to Romero. He's been a big topic of recent. Eddie, are you keeping or selling him this year? And what do you make of the rumors around, him going to Atletico? Maybe he's already spoken to Simeone. Not too sure how much I buy into it, that he's actually spoken to Simeone. Maybe you might feel differently, but where do you stand with Romero? Are you getting a little upset with him? Do you feel like he should go? Do you rate him as highly as Dave and I do? Do you feel like we kind of overrate him? Where do you stand on Cootie?
Look, when back to answer that question, I have to go back to Kane, because for me, I was on the side of selling Kane just because, I don't know, at that time I saw Kane wanted to go, so sell him. Like, we needed the money. But then Dave keeps bringing up this point that club boards are going to reinvest, and he's right, they're not going to reinvest. I don't trust them to reinvest the money from the selling of Romero. And look, Romero's a world-class player. If you want to compete for trophies, like Dave said, you don't go selling your world-class players. You keep them. You keep them and build around them. You build a squad around them. This guy is a vice captain of our club. He can, for me, he's basically a captain in the way he shouts and where he, not all the time, but sometimes he does lead. And I want him to show that more, show more leadership. And I want to keep him, because if we build around this guy and just keep adding to him, I feel like we could have a really good squad around him. Really good. We already got good defenders, good backups to him coming in with Vukovic. Dorrington has been highly rated by Ainge. We also got Ashley Phillips. Some people rate him quite highly. We got a huge amount of centre backs that can back up Romero if he get injured. he'll be a great leader for them, a great example for what a good centre back should be. And you want our centre backs to grow, we keep experienced centre backs. We can't keep selling our experience, because I've heard this a lot, and Paul brought it up. We sold all our experience in the summer. We had no one here to lead this team, and kids don't win the trophies. Famous saying, they just don't. So we got to keep. I'm on the side of keeping Romero and building around him for the future, whether it's under Ainge or not. We're just going to keep Romero, win a trophy hopefully this season, which will probably hopefully convince him. But look, we have 2 more years of control over Romero. Don't sell him this year. If we don't win it next year, maybe because you're selling him with 1 year left. But with 2 years left, you keep him and you just keep him going. Because I've thought about Kane a lot. And I was like, what happened if we won something last season? Could we maybe convince Kane to stay? And probably could have, actually. Looking back at the season, maybe would have won something under Kane. So, look, we'll see what's happened this season. And if Romero leads in the Chelsea game and leads in the Frankfurt game, I'll be 100% backing him for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think Romero finds himself in a similar position to what Kane did. The only issue is that I think with Kane, Kane wanted to give Spurs every chance he could to see them meet his ambitions of, wanting to win trophies. And I think with Kane, he just wanted to win one trophy at Spurs at the end of the day. I don't think it was like he wanted to win trophy after trophy, like maybe Romero does, or like maybe some other players do. He was a guy that, just wanted to win a trophy with his boyhood club. With Romero, I think he just wants to be at the highest level possible, competing with the very best players and having good players around him and having a good manager that's headed in the right direction. He's just a very ambitious guy, and I just don't think Romero sees any positive signs right now with Spurs when it comes to that, right? And with Kane, maybe it was a bit more. I think we were lucky that he did, come through the academy and he was someone that had a real attachment to this club. I don't think Romero has the same attachment that maybe Sonny or Kane do. And, if he feels like the club isn't headed in the right direction to match his ambitions, this is where I can see these rumors of him maybe potentially wanting to leave can come from. But I don't blame Romero for that. I don't actually have any real, malice or any real harsh feelings towards him for that. If you're a competitive guy and you're someone who wants to be at the very best level and you feel like the team that you're currently playing for isn't headed in that direction, I don't blame you for your head being turned a little bit. It's the case in all sports, guys who really rate themselves, guys who play at a very, very high level or want to play at a high level, they will leave or they will, finesse some sort of move away from the club if they feel like the team they're playing for isn't headed in that direction.
Yeah, look, I don't blame. Honestly, I rate him a lot, and if he wants to move and to go win trophies, I don't blame him. But look, the way I see Romero as a person, I feel like he does love the club. I don't know. Whenever he scores a goal, whenever something happens, he always the first thing he does is kiss that badge, and I do think he does feel attachment to this club of some sort. Whether it's the same attachment Kane or Sonny has, but it is attachment. And I feel like we are just letting him down. And I feel like he is in the exact same spot like Kane is, wanting to win trophies and want to win trophies at Spurs, but he can't do that there. And he's a ambitious guy. He wants to win, and naturally, I don't blame him. So if we can't match his ambition, then what do we expect? He's going to leave. He's going to want to leave. And look, this is all on the board, all on Levy. You can't put this on Ainge. You can't put this on the can somewhat put this on the players, but just can't put it on Ainge or Mel. It's on the board. It's on the board. We're not backing Ainge or this team. You've got to bring in better players, surround this team with better players to push us on. We're just not doing that. So I don't like you said. I don't have any malice towards Romero. I respect him. I feel like he is a great player and he will go on to win a lot more trophies if he does leave us. If he decides to stay and we win trophies, I'll be very, very happy. But look, Romero is a great player, and I'm happy he's still at the club at the moment.
Well, I agree with Paul's point too, though, where he can maybe get some love back from the fans if he really, steps his game up in these next couple of weeks, these really important games, and drags us through games. Then I think he would get a lot of love back from the Spurs fans for sure. Jet Spence interview, if you had any thoughts on that, Eddie, my big question is, did that do more harm or good to the team? Do you feel like?
I don't know. I haven't fully watched the interview. I've heard bits and pieces from
Okay.
it. But look, I feel like he has every right to go do an interview. It's his right to do it. He was caught up to the English squad. He got nothing else to do, so he might as well go do something. So he went to do this interview with Rio Ferdinand, an ex-player who he could learn stuff from. He could probably talk to him before that podcast and after the podcast about stuff, and probably learned a thing or two. And look, I rate Jed Spencer highly, very highly. I feel like he will be a great player for the future of England and for the future of this club if he stays long term. And I just feel like Spence, I wouldn't say he did harm to the team at all. I feel like he just maybe rubbed some people the wrong way with what he said in the interview, maybe. But look, I took no offense to the team or to myself for what he said. It's true. He wasn't really given a chance in Spurs under Conte or on the Ainge first. I feel like there's a bit more backstory behind what he said. He didn't say the full truth of what was happening behind the scene at Spurs. Maybe he did have a bit of an attitude when Ainge first came in, and Ainge didn't like that. We all know Ainge is a big personal attitude, and maybe that's why he was shipped out on loan. And he then went to Genoa and thought about it, came back, and now he showed that he wanted to play at this club, play under this manager, and that's why Ainge gave him a chance preseason, and then gave him a chance again in the regular season. And look, he's taking it fully, and he deserves every bit of praise he gets. I just hope Spence keeps going, because look, this guy could be a new right back for the future. He's only 24. He's very young, and he'll keep going to more heights. And hopefully we can just match the ambition of him, and he doesn't leave us like Romero looking like he might. So yeah, Spence, I don't think he did any harm to himself or the club, really.
I kind of agree with you, though, that when you say maybe we didn't get the whole story from Jed Spence, or maybe he's telling the best version of himself, no harm in that. A lot of people do that. It's, human nature at the end of the day. Yeah. But you are right by saying, like, sort of when he, even when he was asked, why didn't Ange Postecoglou give you a chance, originally, he sort of, made it out to be like he had nothing to do with it. And it's like, maybe you are leaving out some information there. There isn't just, he didn't just send you out on loan for no reason at all. That seems a bit crazy, if that were the case. I just, and also Johnny, we were speaking to, hinted at maybe there were some stuff behind the scenes that, Jet had been doing, off the pitch that was indicating he wasn't really in the right headspace, or wasn't really showing that he's that motivated, to get his way back into the Spurs team. But he's probably had a big sort of reality check, and, has sort of turned things around, for himself, but also his own career. And I think mostly the interview, I think it did a lot of good for him. In terms of the club, I'm not too sure. I don't think it's really that damaging what he's said or what he's done. I think he's actually said mostly very positive things, about Ange as well as James Maddison and some players like that. But I don't know. It's a tough one for me with Jed Spence. I think it's probably did more good for him than it did really any good for the club or anything like that. But, maybe he deserved that. Maybe he had been waiting his time to sort of clear the air on some things and whatnot.
Yeah.
And
look.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Look, like I was saying, Spence is an interesting character on and off the pitch, and I just hope to see the best of him against Chelsea. But the way I've been saying, Ainge is starting him over Paul, which a lot of people have been asking. So let's see he gives him his all, and let's see what he does, because I wasn't happy with his end performance against Fulham. I was actually quite disappointing. He let that second goal in, basically. He didn't give Davies any help. He was walking while him and Sessegnon was fighting over the ball, which I felt was just not right. He should have gone and tried to help Davies out. So, look, I want to see him do better against Chelsea, and let's see what he can do, because we're going to need his 100% effort against them.
Mm-hmm. And my other question that I was going to ask you, Eddie, was on the sort of end of season review that supposedly Spurs are going to be doing. The ITKs have come out and said this is the short list that Spurs are looking at. Iraola is the top target. I'm not sure if I bought too much into that, because I feel like they were just going a little early. I think Spurs are waiting to see how this game against Frankfurt goes, and, whether we are going to get knocked out early from the Europa League. What did you make of the fact that, Spurs have this short list and they're doing end of season review? What did you make of that?
I find that a bit ridiculous. I think the ITKs, like you said, went a bit too early with this one. I feel like they probably worked out weeks before this international break, Jack. And they were waiting for it. But look, I think it is a bit too early to judge Ainge fully, because people got to take in context this whole season, what the club had done to back him this whole season. And we're still in the Europa League. We're still in the quarterfinals. If he get knocked out, I can see it's happening at the end of the season, 100%. If we make it to the final, I think Spurs have to take a big consideration of what they're going to do in the summer. Will they keep it? Will they go? If he wins, well, you can't go sacking him now, can you? Just become the most successful manager at Spurs since we won the UEFA Cup back in 1983-84 season. So you can't go sacking a manager after winning the cup. So we'll see what Ainge does in the Europa League. It all hinges on that. So I'm 100% behind this team, 100% behind Ainge. And I just want to win, Jack. You know me, I'm a winner, and I don't like losing. So let's see what we can do against Frankfurt. I believe we can beat them. I just feel like they've been on a downward spiral ever since they sold Marouche to City. They have been in bad form at the moment in Frankfurt, losing quite a few games, drawing quite a few games. So we'll see what we can do against them home. The home fixture will be important. We got to go to Frankfurt with at least a 2-goal lead. If we go there with a 1-goal lead, it might be difficult to hold on to. And I can see it going to penalties if that's the case. So yeah, we'll see what we can do. But I'm excited for the whole game.
I agree with that, actually. Frankfurt haven't necessarily been in the very best form. I think they're probably in a bit better form than we are for the most part, but it's not really saying very much. And they're a team that, in a way, though, have some sort of European recent heritage. They won the Europa League not too long ago with Oliver Glasner. They have a very passionate fan base, by the way. They've I would say of the Bundesliga fan bases, they probably have one of the best ones in terms of fan atmosphere, club atmosphere, that sort of thing. So it will be a very difficult place to go. I actually think the Chelsea game will be really good preparation, to some extent for that Frankfurt game, because we know Chelsea fans, they absolutely hate us, and going there and seeing if you can try to get some sort of result will give you, I think, momentum for then a very difficult atmosphere the following Thursday. Completely agree with you on that, Eddie. Any other sort of thoughts or maybe things that you wanted me to ask you about, or?
Look, I feel like it just people need to calm down on the whole situation with Ainge. I feel like people are going a bit too early. I feel like if he get knocked out in quarterfinals, 100%, he's be gone. I just feel like people are living in the moment. And I feel like people are going too early on Iriola, because people are sitting on are going at Ainge for what Iriola is doing, the same thing, like you and David said. Like Iriola, what CV does Iriola have? Worse than Ainge. He hasn't won anywhere. Iriola, Ainge has. He's won everywhere he's been, and he hasn't won with the best team either. Like he went to Celtic. Yeah, Celtic is one of the best teams, but he was not when he went there. They were losing. We lost to Rangers that previous season. They were total mess, and he came there and won. And he did it in Japan, relegation club, did it in Australia, did it with Australia. Look, I just feel like people just need to calm down a bit. I understand the frustrations are 100%. I hate losing more than anyone in the world, and I want us to win. And look, I'm behind this team, and people should get behind this team. Come Chelsea, come Frankfurt, come Southampton. Just get behind this team, push this team on, carry this momentum to the end of the season. Because if we beat Chelsea and Frankfurt, the season is going to be a wild ride. I'll tell you that much, Zach. The end of the season is going to be a fun ride.
No, I agree with you, man. As much as I've had a lot of criticism for Ange recently, it's not really as much to do with the football pitch. It kind of has to do off the football pitch. I just think, the moment you just start attacking fans and, sort of the cans of worms he opens on himself with the media, I've just found very annoying and frustrating. But I agree with you when it comes to him versus Iriola. I think Iriola is doing very, very well, right now with Bournemouth, but I think he strikes me as a bit of a flavor of the week sort of manager that's doing very well. But, does he really, have any sort of CV to suggest that he could take on a much, much bigger club with much higher expectations and more pressure, but then also the confines and the limitations and the obstacles that Spurs give you, right? Will he be able to handle all that? I'm not too sure, actually. So that's why I'm a little bit surprised why people think, Iraola is just an automatic, to do so well with Spurs. So yeah, Dave and I are in agreement with that. And it seems like you are as well. And Eddie, we got big weeks ahead, sir. So hope to see you around here often. And thanks for supporting us, my man. You're very, very kind to us.
You're welcome, Jack. I'll be around. I might be in the fan show on Big Up. I'll see how I feel. But yeah, I'll be around, Jack. Don't worry. We'll definitely be on clubs if you're ever up.
Would love to be.
Time if you ever do free.
Yeah, man. Would love to be. Tonight, it's usually like like you guys know, for me, since I'm on the West Coast, it's just my time zone is just so crazy. For me playing clubs at like 1 or 2 p.m. is often a bit difficult. Usually I'm reserving my video games for a little bit later in the evening when you guys are all at bed. If I were on the East Coast, maybe things would be a little bit easier. But I'll try to make time for it. Since but yeah, tomorrow we'll do a game. We'll do a big upstream tomorrow for one of the Premier League games, and then there's going to be another one on Wednesday too. So hope to see you around, Ed. Really appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, you will. Good seeing you again, Jack.
See you, Eddie. Thank you, man. Have a good one.
You will. Bye.
Alrighty, and then we also big up to Ed. Actually, like Paul, I thought he did great. On that fan call-in. Always has good things to say, and is just a really, really lovely person, Eddie. And we have one last guest here, Donovan. He saved the link. It is popping in. Look forward to chatting with this guy. Just going to take Monster Munch's comment here. Thank you, Monster Munch. Let me see where sort of status you are with that membership. But thank you. Over 2 years of support as well. Very, very kind of you. Keep up the great work, you bloody yank. Coys. Man, trying the best here. It's been a lot of sort of stalling and a lot of sort of just me yapping because it doesn't seem like people are maybe fully ready yet to go back into Tottenham Hotspur mood. It wasn't really the busiest of fan shows at any point, really. So would like to see some more, people hop on maybe the next one. Dave couldn't make tonight. I think he had a sort of a family affair. Thinks he had some family in town that he doesn't get to see very often. So we can kind of understand, the need to go do that. And tonight, I can see maybe why people, again, aren't totally ready yet to get back into Spurs mood. But we have to at some point. Big games ahead. Chelsea away. Then we as well have Frankfurt the following Thursday. So we have to muster up some courage and muster up that momentum to take on, these difficult weeks. And we're getting back into the mess of things. And also thanks to Spotlight on Spurs as well for hopping on in the chat. Really appreciate you guys. But let's get on Donovan. And I think we'll wrap things up after Donovan here. But I'm glad that he saved the link because, it's nice to at least get to 4 guests. It's been a very, very slow fan show. So I'll take anybody I can get. Let's bring him on here.
Wow, the slim pickings. I didn't realize there's a tumbleweed ghost town. I would have listened. I was busy.
No, it's okay, man. That's how it is. That's how it is.
Backing up right now, man.
Donovision, man. Take me through some of these topics here. The first one we've been chatting about is, just maybe the Chelsea away game this week. Does Ange go with his strongest lineup against Chelsea in preparation for the Frankfurt game, or do you go with a stronger lineup against Southampton?
Southampton.
You go with a stronger lineup against Southampton.
No, I didn't know Southampton came into the equation. I'd prioritize Frankfurt over anything.
You have Chelsea this Thursday, you have Southampton on Sunday, and then Frankfurt the following Thursday. So do you just continue to rotate, or do you go with a strong squad before the Frankfurt game?
So we play Chelsea on the 2nd, which is Saturday, right? Or was it Thursday?
We play Chelsea this Thursday, and then Southampton on Sunday.
And then next Thursday, Frankfurt.
Yes.
So go throw everything at Chelsea. I hope it sticks. And then rest, and then do it again on Thursday. Is it the first leg away, or it doesn't really matter? Just do that, dude. Yeah.
First leg is at home for the Spurs, and then second leg is away from home.
Yeah. I don't know anything about Frankfurt other than they had Glasner when he left, and then Mamouche when he left, and Kamada's not there anymore. So they had the Kostic a couple of years ago. So I have nothing on Frankfurt. I just hope we should be able to beat them. The only club from the Bundesliga to give us problems, I would think, would be, you got to give them respect. Maybe 2 clubs, just considering our season, Dortmund and Bayern. So that's about it. Yeah.
The reason I also ask it though, right, is because in that Fulham game, right, Ange made a lot of rotations before we had like a 2 to 3 week break there, right? So Ange, in my opinion, kind of messed up by doing that. I don't think he needed to make that much rotation before, an international break. It's just, it's kind of the reason we're asking, right? Is what sort of lineup will he go with, against a Chelsea team that I think are kind of a bit all over the place. Of course, they're doing a lot better than us this year in terms of their league form. And, they have their own Europa Conference League, competition to push through. It's just that, I think this Thursday game could be a great chance to play in an away atmosphere that's very difficult to go to. They absolutely hate us over there. Try to get some sort of result, which I think could translate to momentum to carry on to the following Thursday. And you do have to beat Southampton, even if I think you rotate for that game. You just have to beat them. They're the worst team in the Premier League in some time now. And it feels like we keep saying that year after year because these relegation sides just keep getting worse and worse and worse, with handling the Premier League strength. So that's kind of, the reasoning behind the question is, try to get some momentum. And that's been the case all season, because Spurs haven't been very good at that.
It means something too. Like, because like Klopp, when Liverpool had a pretty shitty season a couple years ago, yeah, I remember his press conference. I don't even know why I watched it. I think I watched it maybe on a high horse, just kind of like looking, kick him while he's down kind of thing. But then he came through smelling like roses, right? And like he's typical white in teeth, freaking German white teeth, and he's like, you know what? If we can give the fans something this season, like if we can give the fans something, let's give them maybe like 7-tooth thumping against United. Maybe that's something we can have, right? And so, regardless of what happens in Europa League, if we can take like a scalp and do turn it on, I get it. And I was thinking the other day, I was getting real nostalgic about Tottenham, because when Vertonghen retired, right? Like that was like, whoa, like that's the end of an era. And that's probably one of the best one-on-one defenders I've ever seen. I was at my club practice yesterday and like we're doing 1v1s and I was just like channeling my inner Vertonghen, like almost like when he would go so low to the ground, his knuckles were almost dragging on the ground, right? And he was just like marking his defender, right? Now we get this like behind the hands woke football where like you can't like track your man or even put a hand in the box. And the points I'm trying to say is that how far we've fallen. Toby and Jan was just like a dynasty. That was like a stigma. Like people knew about that, right? People knew about how good Tottenham's defense were, right? That was like a partnership, and that was their national team partnership too. And the closest thing we've had is like Van de Ven and Romero, but it's like, is that even the same? Because it's on paper, it's the same. It's like when you load FIFA, you talk about FIFA with Eddie the Eagle there, and like you just open FIFA and then you just select your best players and you put them in and you hope it wins. It's like, well, we haven't even been able to do that at Tottenham, like because just injury crisis and everything. And it would mean a lot for Ange to like win at Chelsea, but I'll be 100% brutal with you. Like it doesn't, as a Spurs fan, it kind of hurts me to say this. Like I'm really indifferent against this result against Chelsea. But to be honest, as long as we don't get relegated, like I just want that Europa League, man. I just want the Europa League. I want that Europa League so bad.
Your eggs are all in that basket, and that's where all your stress and all your anxiety is going into is that game. I think that's probably a very healthy approach there, sir. Into maybe some other business then. I'm not sure if I asked you about that Jed Spence interview. What did you think of that? Is that something that did more harm than good, to the club and the team, or is that something that maybe did more good than harm? Where do you stand on it? What's the cost? What's the benefit of that?
But what I got out of it was the fact that Ange tries to like take credit for his transformation. It's like, I gave him a test. And he passed with flying colors. Like, that's a little bit of a oof afterwards, right? But it is like manager first football, so I do get it. Like that's kind of how it has to be, right? Like to win something, like you have to like believe in something bigger in yourself, and you can't just be like 11 individuals. So, but the character was cool to see. I thought it was cool to see a nice, chilled, relaxed. Like I don't mean this disrespectfully, like a very simple person. Where it's like he was even saying for Rio, and Rio even said it himself. And Rio's won everything in world football, except the World Cup. Where it's like the club football, I should say. Where it's like if your life is like partying lights and like this high of London lifestyle and everything, like you're not living the proper footballing life and you're not gonna be there long. It's like, no, you're living a boring life. Like you're eating boring food, you're doing a boring mundane routine of like you're sleeping at scheduled times, like you're eating, you're working out at scheduled times. You don't have time to like socialize, any spare times, self-improvement, and like you go through this life of like mediocrity, but for the rest of us it looks like this stardom because you're getting this huge paycheck at the end of the day. And he said once he learned how to embrace that, like, yo, that's powerful to me, because it's like it shows that, hey, he wasn't doing the right things. Maybe he did have his music on too loud late at night in Leeds, you know what I mean? Maybe he was like, not appreciating everything. But then he touched on Genoa when the fans actually loved him, and he felt that love for the first time again, and then that passion for the game, where it's like, I transcend with that, because it's like, oh, this last season with this new Prem team I just played for, like, I was that player. Like, I was like the Conte Spence. Like, it's like the one manager wanted me, but the other manager didn't. And so, like, I was like that club signing where I was just more of a locker room presence. Like, I made impacts in games, but I didn't get the chance I got deserved. And like, I know I'm rambling here, but you asked me about Spence. Like, he said, like, it's towing that line of like, hey, I'm the guy. Like, I'm the guy. But you can't say that, because some people just take that arrogance. So it's all about finding that balance, you know? And that's exactly what he said too. He's like in it, and he has his glasses on, looking all chill. Like,
he's in a good place right now, Jed. You can tell, you can tell he's a guy that's, seems to need that confidence in order for him to play at his best. I think we didn't necessarily get the whole story from him, like you alluded to. I think there was probably maybe some off the pitch issues with him, just maybe, I don't know what it was. He maybe got so disillusioned by the way Antonio Conte had treated him, the way Daniel Levy had treated him, with him being signed. I imagine he also was frustrated with his agent. His agent, is the one who probably helped finesse that move, for him to go there, only for him to find out it wasn't really wanted. That would be really difficult for someone, I think, who's as young as him, right, to deal with that sort of situation. And probably took him time to get his head right again. But now that he has done, we're getting the benefits of it. It's just taking a little bit of time. And he's showing that he's a guy that I think needs confidence. He needs someone that can put an arm around his shoulder, it looks like, as well. He's not someone that can maybe always just motivate himself every time. Maybe he can now, but when he was a little bit younger, probably that wasn't the case. He needed someone like Conte to put his arm around his shoulder, and Conte's never been that sort of manager, so it's never going to work out.
Maybe it's not even like he needs to put his arm around him, but it's like the first club statement, from like Tottenham Hotspurs, like after signing a Villa jersey. He's like, oh yeah, this is a club signing. He's not going to fit this year. Like, and he knows that, like, he has to go on loan, and he had a very good understanding. Like, he was very mature for his age. Like, some 28-year-olds, like Christian Eriksen had that vibe about him too, where he was like beyond his years, where he was very intelligent, where it's like, like, this is the system, man. Like, you have to please the manager, you don't get chances and everything. But what I was just going to touch back on is, you said his agent screwed him over. Did he end up switching back? Did he switch to TSA? Do you know that? Like that?
Well, he said in the interview, he said my agent at the time, which is like saying, my girlfriend at the time, or like, like you're alluding to the fact that, that's no longer, your agent or whoever.
And then the last thing I'll say about Jed Spence is like, he's such a young character, but yeah, maybe he does at some level enjoy having an arm put around him, because every footballer does. Like, we do all possess some level of ego, because we're performers. You have to play in front of fans, like in front of the lights. When the lights turn on in the stadiums, that's when we turn on, right? So it's like, we have fun. But it's like, he never lost his self-belief. Like, he might have played like shit, maybe, like that was an environment and like learning stuff around him, but at some level, like, he might have put it down for a second, but at least he always like had that belief. I never got tarnished, and it's just glowing and showing right now. It's crazy. And like, we have one of the best right backs in the country, and it's by accident. And it's nuts. But that's all I have to say about Jed Spence, man.
Yeah, let's do the other bit of business, which was, you probably saw over the international break, you saw rumors Spurs are doing this end of season review of Ange. They have this short list that has Iraola, Marco Silva, Thomas Frank, and Terzic, names like that. Personally, Donovan, I think they went a little too early on that. I think it was just sort of an opportunity to maybe get some clicks and sort of generate a bit more sort of fuss and whatnot around the fan base, because surely, right, the club won't be making any decisions until after this Frankfurt, these two legs against Frankfurt. Do you think they are drawing up a short list, though, for a manager, or do you think they went a little too soon on that?
I think you'll have to, like, just for proper business due diligence. I think regardless of Andrew or not, like, I think any good company at the end of a fiscal year, at the end of like the business year, they'll have like an assessment of like staff and resource and expenditure and whatnot. And like, Levy loved numbers, right? So
that's what Paul said.
Yeah, totally. So he's going to get like regarded no matter what. But I think just like making it public kind of just shuts people up that are like the stark Andrew outs. You know what I mean? Kind of gives like the other people a little stone to throw just in case, where it's like, yo, dude, he's going to get a review anyway. Like, chill, man. You know what I mean? Like, because there's a lot of tension building right now, man. I can only imagine the pressure cooker environment of that second leg, up for that first leg at home. It's going to be great. I really hope we can take advantage of it. and not falter like we do. And sometimes it goes the other way to implode. We can't even make a simple 4 or 5 yard pass, and then what happens. Yeah, and Stamford Bridge is so bad for that, man. I remember we were playing the best game of our life. We were playing like 1 touch, 2 touch. Christian Eriksen scored a banger from half, just over half, just on Caballero. And then it's like the 86th minute or something stupid like that. And then remember Trippier does an own goal pass back to Lloris, like horror stuff you never see in football, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it obviously comes down to mentality. I think that stinks from the club, rotten something. And that goes to mentality. That goes for 1 trophy in 16 years. So yeah, you are right. Like Chelsea's Stamford Bridge goes for a huge way if we could lift that curse. Sorry, buddy. What?
No. I think you were making good points there. The point I was going to bring up is something I said to Eddie, where the frustrating thing about Chelsea is that it's not like we've been outplayed every single time. There have been so many games where I would point out, like you did with a good example there, where it's not really like Spurs were being dominated or anything like that, just being completely killed. We've played really well against them, but then somehow it just didn't end up with anything. And Ange Postecoglou even could face being, the worst ever manager against Chelsea in Spurs history, where he will have, I think, like 4 losses off the bounce against them. But you think of 2 of those losses in particular, he was the better team in 2 of them. Like the game, the first one at home against them, where we were at top of the league, 2 red cards, massive injuries, and yet we still almost looked like we were capable of coming back and getting something from that game. It's just, Dyer's hit off the post, Bentancur as well, I think, had one off the woodwork as well. Just so many things just weren't going for us. And then the most recent one, in this home fixture, we went 2-0 up only for us to sacrifice the lead. I think there were some mistakes individually by players that led to that. Ange, I think, takes some responsibility as well. But that was a game too where I didn't feel like Spurs were being dramatically outplayed or anything like that. There was a bit of a, pull and tug, between the 2 teams. It was a really good game. So that's the frustrating thing with Chelsea is lots of times we've lost to them. We've actually not necessarily been completely outmatched and outplayed. And this Thursday, I guess we'll find out, what sort of version of it will be, because we've been spanked before. He has gotten spanked too.
What got me for this last Chelsea game, that's the whole Chelsea Ange era Sega, is the fact that some no name, when I say no name, I mean, because like I believe in like wood club football, like I believe in like old school football where it's like you come through academy, like you're a local boy, you want to play for your local club, and then you make it to the local club, and then and then the local club sees you, and you breathe good for your local club, and then maybe a bigger club comes against you, right? You don't go in there for the money. You don't go in there looking for an agent. You don't go there like scalping clubs left, right, and center. Because I was thinking about it the other day. I was like, yo, like, what if I did make Canada, like, blah, 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 blah. And I started like thinking, like, can't we make money here in North America? Like, if I did want to like make a decent living here, like some players do, like I would have to financially like twist my club's arm to the point where it's like they're bleeding now to have me there, and that's not a good relationship because you're there to play the game for the club you love, right? So I don't understand the mentality. So when a city academy product gets bought for an outrageous amount of money, then it gets thrust in the first team, it gets a couple of fluky goals and catches flight like a young rookie can, and then doesn't let go of that wave, and he comes to our stadium and just rides the momentum of like Chelsea hate that was thrown way back into like the post-World War eras where they used to like hiss at the Jews and shit, It's like, dude, you have no idea what it means to be a Chelsea Tottenham fan, bro, like Chelsea Tottenham rivalry, bro, right up to like the Battle of Bridge, right up to everything back with like even Jason Kunde. Like, we hate Chelsea, man. Like, fuck Chelsea, dude. And you just come in here all cocky, like, oh, like you don't know like what it fucking means, and you're gonna act like, oh, dude, that pissed me off so much. And the fact, like you just said, dude, like, bro, and you haven't won. I'm just riled up now, but like, yeah,
I know what you mean. I get riled up because Nicholas Jackson also does the same thing, and I just find him to be, a bit of an idiot of a footballer, really, to watch. He's just, kind of a joke, really. He also seems to. It's something about Chelsea, man. They really train their players to absolutely step it up against Spurs and to play their hearts out. Whereas with us, we occasionally get it, but not every time. They seem to show far better mentality, Chelsea players, in these big games against Spurs than Spurs players do. And you just hope that we can turn that around and break that curse. Just something as well on, bit of news that we've been talking about is Romero. He's been linked with those moves away from the club. What do you make of that situation? Do you think Romero is going to leave in the summer? If you had the choice, would you keep him? Would you sell him? What would you do with Christian Romero?
Depends where you finish. Like if they get a trophy. Well, Here's the thing. You're caught into the trap.
Do you think some of us overrate Romero? I think he's like world-class center back, but some people don't. Some people think he's dramatically overrated.
Well, here's the thing, man. Like we said, I'm going to put my Dave job on here. I said the same thing about Harry Kane. The goal's been gone to be a lower mid-table player. And he said, Dave, listen, man, Harry Kane, whatever, he's at the end of his career. He's not even that good. He doesn't impress. And look where we are now. We can't get in the habit of selling our best players because that's how we got forward as a football club. And that's true. I resonate with that. That is exactly what I believe as well. We can't be getting in this habit of selling our best footballers, man. Like, I heard we're going to demand 100 million for him. Like it's going to be a Levy stink. Like he's not going to roll over. Like he's going to be like, sign this. Like it's going to be a pre-drafted agreement. If it is, it's going to be all set up. It's going to come over, sign here, and it's going to be done. But if we finish in relegation like threat and we don't win a trophy, yeah, we might let him go and then rebuild with Vuskovic and Phillips, and then maybe bring in like a bring him like I actually really like the look of that Crystal Palace center back. The one that could partner them.
Yeah.
St. Just isn't it St. Just or something, or what is it?
Oh, not Mark Guehi. Lacroix or
Lacroix. Yeah, Lacroix. But
yeah,
we're probably gonna get Guehi anyway, right? So it's like we're gonna get Guehi. We're gonna have a situation where we could have had Guehi, Romero, and Van de Ven in the same team. That would have been crazy. So I heard we're gonna reignite our interest for Mark Guehi anyway. I forgot about that. But no, I want ideal world. I want us to win a trophy and keep Romero, but I think that's where it needs to be. We need to win a trophy to keep Romero. I think that's how it has to be. So it's up to us.
I think you're right. That is like probably how you keep Romero is you do go as far as you can in the Europa League, try to win that trophy, and then that can hopefully convince him to stick around. I think the other bigger thing too is that you build around Romero. You bring in top level players to make him feel like what, this club actually is trying to win things and is pushing the boat out to deliver trophies. And for me, I just think Romero is in a similar headspace to Berbatov, Modric, Kyle Walker, plenty of players, Gareth Bale as well, where
it's good club, but it's not serious. It's not serious. It's like, this is a good club. Yeah,
it's a good club to move to. They felt like Spurs is the right club for me to develop. It's a massive club as well to play for. Lots of pressure, lots of eyes on you. But then eventually they grow comfortable enough where they're playing at a really high level. They become Spurs' best players, and then they don't feel like, that there's any real direction, with the club, that they aren't actually pushing towards, really achieving things at a high level. And once they rate themselves to be some of the very best in the game, they feel like, I don't know if I can stick around at Spurs, to achieve my ambitions. And I don't really see anything wrong with that. I think that just shows that you're a highly motivated person, and you're as well as a very competitive person. And it's good to have guys like that around at our club, but some people seem to want to sell people when they find themselves in that position. I just think we get it all wrong. I think if someone is leaving because they feel like the club isn't being ambitious enough, I think that's more a sign of, the football club just not doing, the right things. It's not really a sign that the player is trying to disrespect us or anything like that. They just feel like, they want to achieve the most that they can in what is, what is it, a 10-year career for some of these guys. Like, they only have so long to try to achieve their dreams. And if they feel like the club they're at isn't doing that, they have to look elsewhere.
No,
especially if you think you're a world-class player. I think Romero does rate himself highly, right? Like Modric does, like Bale did, like Kyle Walker did, like a lot of those dudes, right? They rate themselves highly enough to compete with the very best. And if they don't think the club they're at right now is doing that, they have to look elsewhere. And I don't see anything wrong with that personally.
One thing I'll say about Walker is he left way too early. He can't believe he didn't see the vision. Like, he could have been playing that Champions League final with us. Like, that's how close we were. I think you sold him in the next season, the season after. Like, that's how close it was. And that's what I'm scared about, because Romero, if he hops through soon, because I see the vision with fans, bro. Like, I'm not gonna lie. But he doesn't live in a perfect world where you like everything kind of like will eventually mold around you to be in this perfect scenario. Like, you have to be reactive, you have to adapt, and he's failed to show that he's adaptable. But I'm gonna talk about what you just said. Like, what's stopping us from being like an Ajax or like a Benfica? You know what I mean? Or like a Dortmund, where it's like we're not as prestige as like the greatness around us, but we can at least have a self-sustainable like cycling network that at least we're continuously have some kind of silverware, where it's like a Carabao Cup. We take the Carabao Cup like really seriously, right? Or like we win an FA Cup at least once a decade, or once every 5 years. Like, at least have something where it's like it's a continual project of group of players, like we can have something to work towards. Whereas rather than having this chop and change, just unsustainable one's attack, one's press, one's this like weird 5 men behind the ball, like wing backs, like every 4 years it's a different kind of play. Like we don't even know how we play anymore. Now we played the same kind of way for the last 2 years, but it's not been the same way. It's just all a mess. But a trophy would kind of pave over the cracks until we kind of get some. Well, I want Nagelsmann, but Poch has been playing with a return, so
Yeah. I mean, we all have maybe our own, good short list that's that's available. But any other final things, man? I think that's kind of what I had about it, for this for fan show. I'm glad that you popped on. It's been a slow one tonight, so I'll take as many as I can get for the fan show. But anything else that you maybe want to chat about? Any other little bits of business?
nothing crazy. No, just in the middle of a move. I do some laundry and then pack up the last 2 boxes and I'm done. And then home back to Okanagan tomorrow.
Okay. Best
Um,
safe travels, my man. And I think would love to see you make that journey back towards the Vancouver area. I know that's kind of in your long-term plans, but
yeah. And then I'll do
best
the
luck with that, brother.
thanks, bro. We'll do the fan show in a new look. Pardon me, pre-match in a new location with a new setup. It'll be nice. Yeah, no, I just like you said, it's hard to put the Tottenham cap back on because it's just been like frayed and just you dropped in a puddle or something. Like it's just not a good season to be a Tottenham Hotspur supporter, and it sucks because it's been that way for the last 10 years, pretty much. Like we've had a couple good cup runs in there, but that's about it. I just like to see that trophy at the end of the year, man. That's all I have to say. Like, there's nothing more to talk about other than that, man. Like, if we don't win the Europa League, then we're still in a crisis. Like, we're in a crisis. If we don't win a trophy this year, like, we're in a crisis. It becomes like what's happening right now in the world, like, it's just a crisis. So we gotta win that trophy, man.
Alrighty, Donovan. Well, appreciate you, sir. And maybe you and I can have a little catch up and a call, as well. Off screen too, sometime soon. And like I said, best of luck with your mood. Safe travels, brother.
Hey, you too, man. And see you soon, hey?
All right, see you soon, man. Catch you, Donovan. Have a good one.
Yeah.
Big up to Donovan. Glad that he popped in towards the end there. And I think we'll wrap this show on the road. Wasn't the busiest of evenings, but that's perfectly okay. I understand Spurs aren't in great place right now, and people are probably still trying to sort of take their minds off of things before we descend into more madness this Thursday and the following Thursday for the Frankfurt game. But tomorrow, panel show, as well as a big upstream. Feel free to join us for both, especially a big upstream. You do help us a ton out by joining us for those. And those, in a way, are like a sort of a free version of a fan show where you can watch the game in the background. Don't even necessarily have to have the game on, but you can chat with Dave and I about life, whatever's going on, Spurs, all that good stuff. It's a very relaxed but fun, I think, sort of place to be. So please join us for that tomorrow. Wednesday, same business. I think we'll have the members preview, channel predictions, tons of content coming out, but then we'll also be doing a big upstream on top of that as well. So plenty of good stuff happening. We're getting back into the regular schedule, getting back into the regular shape of things. And I will see you all very, very soon. I will see you all tomorrow. Come on, you Spurs. And thanks to anybody that popped on tonight, Eddie, Paul, Donovan, as well as Rhino. And thanks as well to Monsters Munch, over 2 years of support. I tried my very best, tonight. And thanks for showing love to me and my fellow Yanks. And Dan Coys as well for being around for over 3 years. You absolute legend. Really appreciate you guys. And thanks to anybody in the chat that's followed along and listened along. Appreciate you guys. And I will see you all tomorrow. Come on, you Spurs.